Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the public comment portion of the West Fargo City Commission meeting for July 10th. The first person that has signed up to speak this evening for public comment is Mrs. Lana Rockow. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Lana Rockow. I live at 3838 7th Street East in West Fargo. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for the chance to provide public comment. I'm speaking as a resident of West Fargo who recently served on the West Fargo Planning and Zoning Commission. Some of you know, especially Mayor Dardis, that I have a commitment to including the public in city decision-making. That's what I want to speak about now. I'm surprised and disappointed that the Commission is moving ahead to further explore a major project for the city of West Fargo, bypassing the process for vetting city development priorities and without public input. I'm referring to the project on your agenda tonight as the selection of P3 developer for the West Fargo Sports Arena P3 project. The project will likely include, as I understand it, a $12 million parking ramp, a $20.6 million hotel, and a $5.3 million hockey arena. I was sitting on the Planning and Zoning Commission this past year as we engaged in an exercise with the City Commission to set development priorities for the city's planning department. The resulting Planning Needs Assessment Action Plan was presented to the City Commission March 20th. This luxury entertainment project does not appear in the first, second, or third tier priorities for development in the city. Crafting a public-private partnership that falls outside city planning and outside public accountability is a bad idea. I argued as a needs assessment plan was being developed that a new West Fargo Public Library should become a priority. A city of this size with its aspirations should be looking at a city amenity that benefits all of us, that extends opportunities for learning and participation in the arts, theater, education, and science, rather than another entertainment venue. To her credit, Commissioner George did pursue a possible public-private partnership for a library at one point. It's disappointing that the Commission has not pursued other possibilities for moving forward with the library. What does the public want in the city? When will the public be asked? Let's put it to vote and find out. Thank you.
Thank you. The second person that we have this evening for public comment is Mr. David Withy. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. My name is David Withy, 2421 McLeod Drive East. Thank you for the opportunity to address you again, and thank you for your service. At the last commission meeting, I was allowed to address you about water loss as an example of benchmarking. I could just have easily used the city fire and police departments, each of which does a great job of transparently reporting publicly the key benchmarks they use. At last meeting, some of you questioned whether I had the expertise about water loss to be relevant enough for you to even listen to me as a part of the formal agenda. You wanted to hear from an expert. So tonight, I would like to share with you the words of an expert, former City Public Works Director Chris Bungart. In the 2019 final budget report, he reported that city water loss from January 2017 through March 2018 was just over 4%. I suggest that if the city had continued to benchmark against that 4%, staff would have soon realized years earlier than 2022 that something was wrong and would have dug into it and solved the problem. I hope Mr. Bungart is expert enough for you. I hope Mr. Anvik will now use 4% as his goal for the water loss. It's been achieved before. A couple of thoughts for you on other matters. You have yet to tell the public what is being done to fix the continuing problem with utility billing. it would be beneficial for everyone if you would report to the public regularly on the search for the new city administrator, the process being used, the listed job requirements, the timeline. We were told it would be 90 to 120 days, who's on the search committee, etc. In a luxury hotel and event center in the middle of a residential area? Seriously? What's the attraction? Where is the market research showing there's a need for this? Have you asked for citizen input? Do we really need this there? And finally, my wife wants you to know that the mosquitoes are moving into our yard in RVs and campers. Until the next meeting, thank you for this opportunity to address you.
Thank you. Our third individual that has signed up for public comment this evening is Mr. Brad Schmidt. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. My name is Brad Schmidt, 617 7th Avenue West, West Fargo. Thank you for allowing me to address the commission tonight. My wife and I have lived in West Fargo for 42 years next month. Raised our family here, served on the School Board of Education, the City Economic Advisory Board, and many other community-related activities. In all of those years of living and raising our family here, I've always had a feeling of safety and security, until the last few years, having been intimidated and harassed by employees from virtually every city department as directed. This for challenging over the last 4 years egregious conduct in our city, which has now become public knowledge thanks to the courage of 3 commissioners. So it's not without some trepidation that I am addressing you tonight. I have a question and a comment for the commission. In reading social media information this past week, there's mention that Jenna Wilm, a city employee who, after voluntarily resigning, was retained as an employee through a separation agreement, prepared by and under the advice of Attorney Shockley through September 1st. Now we read that Wilm is employed by Shockley's very own law firm. Can the commission please tell us citizens if the city is continuing to pay Wilm under the terms of her separation agreement through September 1st, even though she's now working for the very law firm that advised and was responsible for the separation agreement with the city? Your timely response would be appreciated. I also noted that later tonight on the commission agenda, there's going to be a swap of secondary portfolio assignments between Commissioners George and Olson. One might presume that's because Olson's wife has recently become employed by the city in a department position for which he is still holding a secondary portfolio assignment. Doesn't this seem like the city is trying to close the barn door after the livestock has gotten out? Shouldn't this have been done as soon as Olson's wife decided to apply for the position? No one is saying that her employment was influenced by Olson's commission seat, let alone his portfolio assignment, but certainly wiser heads might have dealt with this earlier. Now there will forever be a question as to whether Olson's wife really deserved the position or was simply given it. It is surprising and disappointing that Mr. Scott, as acting administrator, apparently didn't realize this and or speak up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We only had 3 people sign up for public comment this evening. There was a gentleman that had signed up last week, the name, Oschlager, and he did not appear. We would honor that this week if he's in the crowd. Okay, that closes the public comment portion of the meeting. We'll reconvene at 5:30.
You just wasted another 30 minutes of my time.
Yeah. Because you don't want to be anywhere near. Gentlemen, welcome to the Monday, July 10th West Fargo City Commission meeting. Before we start the, proceed with the meeting, would everyone please silence their cell phones that are in the room? Thank you. And with that, would you please join me in a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next order of business is to approve the agenda as presented. Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda as presented this evening. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item D is the approval of the minutes of June 19, 2023. They have been presented. They are in the packet.
So moved?
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of June 19, 2023 as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Building permits. The building permit record has been distributed, and it is in front of you, Commissioners. Are there any questions or concerns that you have?
Make motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. It's been moved and seconded to approve the building permits. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is the consent agenda. We have items A through D. Any concerns, questions?
Motion
comments?
approved?
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented this evening on items A through D. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on, we are now in the regular agenda. First order of business is the fireworks in West Fargo. We have with us this evening Melanie Shocker, consideration of change of ordinance, and the ordinance is under, excuse me, I'll get those numbers. We'll let Mrs. Shocker talk first. And then we're also going to have a report from fire and police with regarding to the holidays week activities and complaints regarding fireworks. So, Commissioner, Melanie's here at your invitation.
Oh, sure.
Please welcome her
Melanie,
to
are you
the.
here?
Please welcome her to the podium.
Well, welcome, Melanie. Thank you for coming in front of us. I know you have some concerns, and we're more than happy to hear them. You'd like to share some of that with the commission? Thank you.
Yes, please. Mayor Dardis and Commissioners, thank you for hearing me out this evening. My name is Melanie Shocker, and my address is 1833 Pentland Street. I'm here to speak about the fireworks of 2023. Overzealous fireworks have been an ongoing problem in our neighborhood going back over 10 years. I am in no way trying to end the 4th of July celebrations or to stop people from enjoying the way they like to spend the holiday. We need to ban fireworks completely in the West Fargo city limits for July 4th and December 31st, as our neighbors do to the east and one city further in Minnesota do. I have heard that it is hard to enforce things now as the ordinance is written. People have given an inch and taken a mile, or perhaps two. Make it easier on the police and ban fireworks altogether. According to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive, which going forward I will refer to the ATF, they classify fireworks as display fireworks, consumer fireworks, and pyrotechnic fireworks. I believe our neighborhood has been lighting off pyrotechnic fireworks for many years. This type of behavior is not only illegal, it is also reckless. The ATF website states articles pyrotechnic are similar to consumer fireworks in chemical composition and constructions, but are not intended for consumer use. Not only are people lighting these putting themselves in danger, they are putting the whole neighborhood in danger. Our home was built by Lauren Christ 16 years ago. By no means is it an older home. It is on a solid foundation. Our home was shaking with the concussion of fireworks being lit that evening. I believe that the fireworks that were being shot off that evening were meant to be lit off by professionals at a venue such as the Red River Valley Fairgrounds or something similar to that. Something else to take into consideration is that there were young kids standing outside by where the fireworks were being lit. The ordinance for West Fargo states total pyrotechnic composition not to exceed 50 milligrams each. I believe the street over from us was doing the same thing. The West Fargo ordinance also states that fireworks will be used July 4th between 8 a.m. Central Standard Time and ending July 4th at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. The block over was well past 2 a.m. I know this as our house was shaking from fireworks being discharged at that time. Mayor Dardis and commissioners, I urge you to ban fireworks for the safety of our people. Please work with Police Chief Otterness in resolving to implement fines that matter to individuals choosing to break the law and endangering others before severe consequences happen and we say, we wish we would have taken action sooner. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Shocker. Commissioners, any questions, comments to Mrs. Shocker? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Next order of business will be with Chief Otterness. Would you bring forward your police reports and the like from what transpired within the last weeks?
Thank you, Commission President Dardis and members of the commission. I just wanted to share some statistics. I know I did receive a number of emails that were forwarded onto the commission. In my almost 3 years that I've been the police chief here, it certainly is a top conversation every 4th of July and New Year's. So, as well as every other city I've worked in, I guess, over my 33-year career. So this certainly isn't unusual to have a number of people upset with some of the things that have gone on. But just to share a little bit about what the police department responded to. So we asked our folks, our civilian support staff, to pull some records from the last 10 days. So basically this is a period that covers the Friday before the 4th of July up until midnight, basically Sunday night. And we responded to 73 complaints, fireworks complaints. A majority of those occurred July 1st through July 4th. We had 20 complaints on July 1st and 19 on the 4th of July. So then they were kind of spread out a little bit. Obviously, the last couple of days, we're well past the 4th of July. Friday and Saturday night, we didn't have any complaints in town, but we certainly had a number leading up to, the 4th of July, and then on the 5th, we had 6, and they went down considerably after that. So our staff were busy. It's a challenging law to try to enforce, both from a state statute or our century code, and our city ordinances really kind of mirror our century code. And one of the problems that we have, and I know our neighbors to the east, Chief Sobalski spoke to his commission about this as well, is century code requires that we observe a violation. And so when people call and complain about fireworks in the neighborhood, unless we happen to actually see them, physically see them lighting off the fireworks, we can't do anything in terms of enforcement. So that leaves us the option of pulling up and asking them to comply with the law, even if there's evidence of, I mentioned earlier today, a pop bottle sitting in the middle of the, or one of these mortar shell containers that's used. Even if that's sitting there, unless we actually see the violation, there's nothing we can do from an enforcement standpoint. So it does really tie our hands a little bit, not only for fireworks complaints, but other things that people routinely talk to us about as well. So the requirement that we observe that certainly ties our hands a little bit. And then again, as we're driving down the street in a marked police car to respond to these things, people are not very likely to be firing them off while we're on the street. They wait till we drive away, and then we'll start again. So those are, I think, some of the challenges that we have from an enforcement standpoint. I certainly appreciate Ms. Schocker's comments. And I know one of the difficulties, even for our neighbors to the east that has outlawed or banned these, is if you drive through the city of Fargo, there are a number of fireworks stands, right? And that makes it challenging, because if there's a fireworks stand right down the street from where you live, even if it's illegal to shoot those fireworks off, it's convenient to stop and pick them up, and people will still engage in that. So over the holiday, but we didn't have any real significant incidents. We didn't have any major injuries this year. We have in the past in the city of West Fargo, but this year, fortunately, we didn't have any property damage that we would consider significant from I think from a fire standpoint. And I can let Chief Fuller talk about that if he wants to, or any personal injuries. So fortunate in that respect. And I'll stand for any other questions that you may have.
Chief? Commissioner Olson.
So it's the state century code that limits us on how we write our ordinance?
Well, I don't know if there would be a way. I guess that would be probably a question for our city attorney, but generally speaking, outside of felony level crimes or certain misdemeanors that are unwitnessed by the police department, everything else to take any sort of enforcement action, like in terms of a citation or something like that, we would have to witness that. That is the way the century code is written. So outside of developing probable cause to make a felony level arrest, or there's certain situations, domestic assaults, order for protection violations, things like that are exceptions to that rule. But by and large, our hands are really tied when it comes to the more minor infractions and misdemeanor offenses, that we actually witness those offenses before we can take legal action or enforcement action.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone else? We'd invite Chief Fuller, Fire Chief for the city of West Fargo. Come. Thank you, Chief. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner President Dardis, members of the commission. So on this issue, I did go ahead and pull the data. I did email it out. For 2023, we had 35 total. We went and pulled the data between, very similar to what Chief Ordinance did, June 30th to July 6th. So this year, we had 35 calls during that time period. One was related to fireworks. This is one of the lowest years we've ever had. Now, moving backwards, we've had, I kind of broke out the data by previous to 2014, so 2011 through 2014, and then 2014 onward. From 2011 to 2014, 8.7% of all fire calls in those, that date period of the 30th of June through the 6th of July were related to fireworks. 2 out of the 23 that were recorded during those time periods each year were caused by fireworks. No injury was reported, no fire loss was reported. But after 2014, when they were legal, 9.5% of all calls were related to fireworks. 29 out of 305 were caused by fireworks. We treated one serious trauma patient in 2021 after a mortar shell hit a young woman, and we counted $186,000 in fire damage or fire loss in that time period in fires that were caused by fireworks.
And that's from 2014 to 2023?
That's correct. Yep. And then I believe there's probably more injury and more fire loss that occurs in our community that gets put out as people are outside. They, maybe their bushes start on fire, maybe their garage starts on fire, and they actually just put it out and don't call us. So I think there's probably still a level higher that we're just not capturing with our data because we weren't called. There is no pattern or trends between the years that have the highest and lowest fireworks injury and loss, but it does show that there is injury and loss due to fireworks in our community year over year, ongoing. It just depends on what year you're looking at, and there's probably factors such as weather, the day of the week that the 4th of July rolls in on, that kind of stuff. So one of the things that I also researched was the International Fire Code, and the International Fire Code does ban consumer fireworks. So there is no safety guidelines for consumer fireworks in the International Fire Code because they just say you can't have them. But the National Fire Protection Association, they do have standards on discharging fireworks, but these apply to professionals discharging, just like was said previous, there's different grades of fireworks, 1.3 to 1.4 explosive class. 1.3 and 1.4 class fireworks, you have to have certain setback distances of anywhere from 10 to 25 feet, depending on the shell being used or the type of firework being used. If it's one of the small ones that has less than 50 milligrams of black powder, or those big shells that we have currently in our city that can have up to 40 grams of powder. So it is a big risk issue. Since we had fireworks become legal in the city, we have added like 10,000 people and developed over 10 square miles. Some of our new housing areas are extremely dense, meaning like they're meeting the minimum setbacks per house, per house, per house, per house. I would say we're 1 4th of July away from a real bad incident, barring the ones that we've already had. So I would agree that it's probably time we look at this ordinance again. I have a memo drafted to ask the commission to take action on it, but I'm gonna meet with Chief Ordinance. We're gonna review it, kind of add some statistical data on the police department. It's not a huge rush right now because this isn't gonna happen again for another 362 days. Yeah. So, but any questions?
Chief Fuller?
Feel free to answer.
Commissioner Olson?
I don't know if that's a question for you or for Chief Ordinance or even for legal, but when we have our high schools here, that after a football game, there's fireworks. It's not on the 4th of July. It's not on December 31st. So do they get a permit, or do they just shoot them off?
They get a permit from the
get a
fire
permit,
department.
okay.
Yep. So within that, the International Fire Code does allow for that if it's being done for a spectator event, something like that. Someone's trained for it, and then they have to get a fire department permit for pyrotechnics. So we do issue a number of pyrotechnic permits during the year, but we actually go out and make sure that they're meeting setback distances, fire extinguishers are in place, where they have identified the fallout zone where that shell's gonna land if something bad happens. So all those are the lights, concert at the lights, they use pyrotechnics. We have to go out and actually do a test run. So every time that they light something off, they actually have 2 sets, and they have to light it off for us first to make sure that we are accepting of the limits. So there is some safety standards, but again, safety standards for that versus you're just lighting them off in the middle of the street. I mean, there is no safety standard to follow because the IFC just bans them. So
It's interesting that you make a comment that light it off in this middle of the street. That's
they're not allowed
illegal.
to. That's correct.
It's supposed to be in your driveway.
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons?
Yeah. I definitely think we need to have more conversation on this, but I wonder that even if we banned them, I mean, Fargo, they're banned, and they have just as much trouble or more than we have. Why, just because we ban them doesn't mean they're gonna stop using them. The chief still has to catch them. You can't just call in a neighbor. So I don't know how much that's gonna really solve the issue we have. The issue I see we having is the biggest one is that some of the stuff is out of control. Some of this pyrotechnic stuff that they're using in our community, and they probably don't even know it's illegal. I think that's a step that we should really look at taking, perhaps through education, or finding these vendors, the local vendors that are selling them. Are they selling pyrotechnic stuffs to the regular citizen? I think, can they? Is it legal? I don't know those. I guess I'm just saying that I don't know just by saying let's stop doing them. That's not, I don't believe that's going to solve the problem.
Yep. I would agree, Commissioner Simmons, that just making it illegal is not going to stop the problem. But it may take a percentage off the plate of people that want to obey the law. So those people are gone. The people that still want to do it will work on education through, enforcement through education. Not to speak for Chief Ordinance, but I know that it's law enforcement, and that's our way of doing things too, is we try to educate rather than enforce. It might not be, like if you were to do this, it wouldn't make it, next year, I can tell you for certain, there will be fireworks lit off in West Fargo during the 4th of July next year, whether or not you put a $5,000 fine on it today. It's still going to happen. It's education and getting out into the community and trying to talk about how dangerous this is. It really is. Because once you light a pyrotechnic or a firework and you let it go, you have no control over where it's going. So it could go on your neighbor's roof, it could go across the street and hit a young lady standing there, and she's going to have deficits for the rest of her life, not being able to walk. So, I mean, it's a super dangerous thing, but I do understand part of it. But also, if you look at what's the 4th of July is just a day. It's a significant day to us patriotically as a nation. I understand that. But we make them illegal on the 3rd, we make them illegal on the 5th, but the 4th, it's okay. The safety part of it is still unsafe no matter what we do. I think maybe part of the solution is we look at working with our partners and trying to find a community-wide 4th of July type event that people can go to and enjoy fireworks in a safe manner. It's a possibility and opens a door.
Commissioners, anything else for the Chief Fuller? Well, I appreciate, the memorandum that you've been working on, and obviously collaborate with Chief Ordinance on that. I do believe that we need to have a sit-down with those vendors. In our city ordinances, we are able to, we permit those that were within our extraterritorial. Well, I went out to the fairgrounds and brought some sparklers for my 5-year-old grandson, and there were 5 vendors, and a 6th one was moving in, I believe, there alone. And so the fact that we do have the right to give them permits to sell fireworks within our extraterritorial, I certainly think that that's impetus enough for them to join us in that conversation. And I'll end up probably charging you, Chief Fuller, with trying to facilitate that with all the various vendors, because we very specifically delineate in our city ordinance the size and the amount of milligrams of gunpowder, And so it's like you said, education is a big part of this, and they need to have that. And at the very least, I believe they ought to have some type of communication in their fireworks sales offices that says this is what's legal in the city of West Fargo. It ought to be posted within, if they're going to be in our extraterritorial selling those fireworks, then it should be delineated to them what's legal and what's not in our city. It's part of an education to the public. So as Commissioner Simmons said and Commissioner Olson, we're going to continue to have additional dialogue on this, and so we'll be checking back in with you and Chief Ordinance. I can certainly empathize with what you see go on for those 4 or 5 days. Our police department would have nothing else to do but monitor that, and we certainly have other needs for our police officers on the street. So That being said, we'll continue this dialogue to Mrs. Schockler. Thank you for coming forward this evening, but we'll continue to research this and see where we're at, and of course, might even have to check in with the legal. Please, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think if there's good news, it's that we have plenty of time to work on this. You know, we have lots of time to sit down and go through
31st
this.
is coming.
Well, that's, yeah.
Days are getting shorter.
Seem to not have an
Well,
issue
please
on
don't say that.
on December
We
3rd.
still have
Commissioner.
time, yeah.
Yep, good point. So,
Yeah.
Chief Fuller, Commissioners, you agree? We charge our fire department with trying to coordinate that educational process and include the police department as is necessary, please.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I would definitely recommend that we have Chief Ottern, just because he's involved on the PD side as well, so I think.
Of course, absolutely. I'm designating one individual to try and get the fireworks people together, and that's Chief Fuller.
Yes.
But certainly, the PD is, you know, you get called when there's an issue. You know, the public is calling him to take a stop to this. So when you got 73 calls over 5 days, that's a concern from the public standpoint. I had people forward me pictures in the last 2 days of their neighbors' garage doors open, and the fireworks displays that they had prepared in those looks just like a pyrotechnic type of an event. So I've had plenty of phone calls and plenty of emails as well. And I don't know if any of them are double ups for the 73 that the police department got. I can only assume so. I had several tell me they didn't call because the neighbors would know exactly who made the complaint.
Yeah.
But, and he's one they forwarded. There was a fire in one of his neighbors' garages that they got out with water hoses. And there was a prairie grasses that the neighbors had in their plantings that the other neighbor lit all of that on fire, so they had a major fire going on with the prairie grasses in the neighbor's front yard. So they put that out with water hoses. So
Yep.
there were some calls you didn't get.
Yes.
Again, thank you everyone for your concerns, and we'll certainly be addressing this in the future.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Anything else, Commissioners? Item number 2 on the regular agenda is the body worn camera program update. And again, have Chief Otterness, West Fargo Police Chief. Chief?
Thank you, Commission President Dardis and members of the commission. Got some good news tonight about our body worn camera program. So, as you know, I put together a number of documents for you for tonight that are contained within your packet, but we have finalized our wear test with Motorola Solutions, WatchGuard. You may know them as WatchGuard. They combined recently, and I can tell you, as part of the wear test, we had, I think, a group of about 20 officers wearing the body-worn cameras over the course of 30-plus days, and we were very pleased with the product. We were able to test everything that we needed to be able to test on the cameras themselves. You know from previous discussions that we've had that we looked at Motorola Solutions initially because of the compatibility with our current in-car cameras, trying to switch or make an acquisition of body-worn cameras to the tune of 85 of those, along with having to switch out our entire in-car fleet, would have probably doubled or more the cost of this program. So we were hopeful that the WatchGuard would meet all the requirements, and I can tell you that having had a number of discussions with not only the people that wore the cameras, certainly our frontline supervisors at the sergeant rank, being able to view some of the footage from some incidents that took place, along with our command staff doing a lot of research behind the scenes, some of our police lieutenants that were very involved in this program. We're very pleased with the outcome and with the quality of the camera. We're pleased with the back-end support. The support that we've gotten from Motorola Solutions and WatchGuard has been second to none. Some of the redaction capabilities, which becomes very time and labor intensive for some of my support staff. Is state-of-the-art. It utilizes some artificial intelligence to identify things that you're trying to blur out, like juveniles' faces maybe at a scene of a domestic or a medical type call, things like that. So it saves a lot of time on the back end. And then obviously we've got the cost portion of it as well. And so I won't read through these reports that I put together for you, but I thought it would be good for you to be able to have all of the information. So what we're looking for tonight, or what I'm before you tonight asking, is for your approval to move forward with Motorola Solutions or WatchGuard as our body camera vendor. As you'll see in the commission agenda cover sheet, we had gotten approval from the commission last year to spend up to $150,000, $153.95 to be exact. That included a $4,000 line within our training budget to be able to send some of our supervisors off to get trained up on not only the good parts of body-worn camera programs, but some of the limitations. And so if we ever have an incident, a critical incident in our community, we can be educated about different things that happen with these cameras in terms of how fast they refresh and how many, what the resolution is on everything, and the delay in between some of the videos. So short of that, we were sitting at about 146 that we got approval for the initial layout of the equipment. The bid, fortunately, came in a little bit under that. Came in at $137,000 for 2023. So a savings of just short of $10,000. The unfortunate part is the annual subscription costs for years 2 through 5 for this contract. So it'd be 2024, 25, 26, and 27. The back-end services, the subscription, and the storage went up. I think we had budgeted in our 23 budget that I presented to you, we had requested $74,000 per year for subscription costs, and it came in at about 86. So we're about $12,000 over for back-end services and subscriptions. But the initial layout, obviously, with the equipment at $137,000 is the big one for year one to get everything up and running. So there's a quote attached to the presentation as well from Motorola Solutions. If you care to take a look at that, it lays out all the different services. I know I've been in front of you before talking about some of the requirements of the program based on things that have gone on nationwide that I've seen, and some pitfalls that we're trying to avoid in the city here. And one of those is a Bluetooth connected sensor to a holster, so that when police officers are out on a call, or they might have to exit their vehicle relatively quickly, the first thought on their mind is potentially protecting either themselves or a citizen, and not thinking about turning on a body-worn camera. When the service weapon is removed from a holster, there's a Bluetooth connection that will automatically activate that body-worn camera, so a police officer doesn't have to decide whether they should do that first or take action first. And so that was a requirement. Those things are all included in the cost that is contained within this quote. And there's some other, I think, interesting things that's on page, the second page of what I put together, that talks about some of the different features that it has. We tested at 720p and 1080p because there's a big difference in the life of the battery. And we found the quality of the 720p cameras, which most departments are running on with WatchGuard, to be just as good as the 1080p in most situations. So that's really all I've got. Again, just a request to get the permission from the commission to make the expenditure of the funds that were approved as part of this year's budget. Again, coming in a little bit underneath what we projected for the initial layout, but moving forward in 2024, I'll work with our finance department to make some modifications to those annual subscription costs moving forward. But if we sign this contract, obviously those costs will be locked in over a period. And if we get approval tonight from the commission, we will let Motorola Solutions know tomorrow and get that equipment ordered. Just so you know, we're gonna order 85 body-worn cameras. We currently have 78 sworn police officers. Anticipate, if the commission approves our '24 budget, requesting 2 additional personnel, we could be up to 80. But that will allow us to keep a couple of spare cameras inside the police department, along with being able to equip our community service officers that are out doing work in the community as well on code enforcement things. They'll be required to wear a body-worn camera as well. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of where we're at tonight. And I'll stand for any questions.
Commissioners, questions for the chief? You had applied for a grant, a national grant, that we weren't successful with this year. Is there any chance, moving forward with, say, the storage fees and the maintenance fees and things like that, will you continue to apply for grants, law enforcement grants?
That's a great question, Commission President Dardis. There are, in fact, one of the DOJ grant that you're talking about through the Bureau of Justice Assistance that we applied for about 1.5 years ago when we started researching this, included an option for brand new cities or municipalities that are launching a body-worn camera program, along with municipalities that are already taking part in a body-worn camera program that are either looking to expand those or add to them. And so there are options for that we'll keep an eye out for. And I think a lot of the departments that already had programs in the works that we're looking to expand, or having additional, storage brought on, different costs that are associated with these programs, were some of the award winners in that limited amount of federal funding that was out there. So,
Very good. Thank
but
you.
there are programs.
Any additional questions for the chief? No. Commissioners, what's your pleasure? This is an actionable item.
Make a motion to approve the current price, the $86,802. Is that correct?
I believe it was 136 and some change.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the increase. I'm sorry, that was the, yep.
Yeah, $137,037.
That would be my motion to approve that.
And how about the additional budget request for,
No, we can't approve the budget for the
that's
previous
true, that's
year.
part of 2024.
Yeah.
My apologies, my apologies. Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded by Commissioner Simmons, second by Commissioner Olson, to approve the $137,037 request for body-worn cameras. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you for the support.
Before we move on, I had made a comment about the fireworks that I was going to share with you where the ordinance was. And it's ordinance number 12-0711, fireworks, and that's in section 2, and that was amended in 2014. So my apologies. I neglected to share that with you. Item number 4 is a selection of a P3 developer for the West Fargo Sports Arena P3 project.
And we missed number 3.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Simmons.
You're welcome.
West Fargo events, event recap. We have with us this evening Mike Amundson, the Executive Director of the West Fargo events. Good evening, Mike, and welcome.
Commission President Dardis and Commissioners, thank you very much for allowing me a few minutes to speak today. So recently we started the undertaking of the 2023 summer event schedule. And in an effort to provide a little bit more clarity on the ROI that the city is receiving for the services that we provide, just a brief recap for you of what we've done so far with a high-level view of just a few of those events. So a reminder for anyone who is not familiar, West Fargo Events is a 501c3 organization that just tries to reduce the burden of ownership for the city on these plaza spaces and the programming that goes along with them. And we do not receive any property taxes from residents. Our offerings are open to the public and almost all are free of charge due to the generosity, mostly of our sponsors, donors, and community partners. Our measurement for success is not a dollar amount. Our measurement for success is event attendance and people participating in the amenities that have been provided. The board members serving on the board at West Fargo Events include 2 city commissioners, Dardis and Commissioner Simmons, 2 school board members, 2 park board members, and 3 community business members at large. Quality of life is difficult to measure, but it's very important to the public experience. And at West Fargo Events, our staff take on the issue of quality of life just like any of our other services do with infrastructure. No, we are not roads and bridges and public safety. We totally understand that. But at the same time, we are a reason why people choose a community to call home. Okay? Many people look at services and schools and crime data and opportunity for parents to be able to make a living, but also stuff to do matters to a lot of the people that decide to make West Fargo home. And we believe that through the quality, the quantity, and the variety of our programming at West Fargo Events, along with the help of the Park District, we are successfully doing that well in our community. West Fargo Event staff simply try to make West Fargo a great place to grow up, a great place to raise a family, and a great place to stay and grow old as you age in life. So far this summer, West Fargo Events, and this is dated as of earlier today, we have well over 134 public events and counting in the summer of 2023. Some of those include the Bike Safety Rodeo, which we have downtown at the POW-MIA Plaza, Pro Bull Riding, which is a very popular event that we've brought back year after year, Kidchella, concerts, family fun nights, family movie nights, you name it, all sorts of great community events happening in our community. So a couple of them that I want to touch on, and there'll just be 3. Recently, we at West Fargo Events were able to work with some donors and sponsors and partners to bring a Vietnam memorial statue to our community. We were lucky enough to work with the Adjutant General. Major General Alan Dorman was our guest speaker and guest of honor at the event, along with the donors that assisted us in procuring this project and the artist who made the project. Thank you to the commissioners that I did see at the event. I thought it was very great. We had 4 different media sources there and a lot of smiles. We had a lot of happy faces. We got some very nice coverage on the front of the forum, along with plenty of other news stories available to people as well. This is a very impactful piece that is hopefully just the first in a series that will continue to add public art and beautification while still memorializing and providing education to our young people in that downtown corridor as we continue to build that out. The next item that we want to talk about tonight is the impact of professional bull riding at the lights. Essentia Health Plaza had a massive social impact for this event, which turned into a very successful economic impact for us as well. So you can see in the pictures, we had a very good crowd. We sold out the show, and not only was it a sellout show, it was also broadcast regionally, which we are very, very proud of. So over 2,000 people took in professional bull riding in person on a single weekend, and over 15,000 households tuned in to the broadcast so far. Now, there are still re-airs happening, and those 17,000 people that we know took in that entertainment from West Fargo, That does not include 200,000 regional customers and households that were served that broadcast that we don't have tracking data for. Midco does not have access to all of Comcast customers, for example, but this event was broadcast all the way down to the Twin Cities, all the way up to the Canadian border, and all across North Dakota and South Dakota. Only some of the households are captured within this data. Taking a look at what a weekend like this does for our community, we brought in visitors for sure due to data points that we collected from Mexico, Puerto Rico, Canada, and 21 states in a single weekend. Our visitor spending, which was done by the Fargo-Moorhead Convention and Visitors Bureau, and they have even admitted this is very conservative. This is what they believe they can prove. Visitor spending was $97,576. Local spending was $107,360, and our on-site commerce was $89,525. That single event brought in just shy of $295,000. Next, we want to talk about a big weekend that we had in June. So this is a map of what we are calling within our data trackers as the West Vest Parade Route map. It is Cheyenne Street from Main to 7th. And so data points are collected via cell phone data. All of it's blind. We don't know who's who or anything like that. It's just pings on the cell phone towers locally here. When we take a look at the social impact of a cruise night, obviously you could see in the pictures here, we lined all up and down Cheyenne Street with classics and new cars and got a wonderful turnout at our June 15th event. Thank you very much to the forum for posting both of these events with their own recap pages on their website and then also included in the newspaper. This is part of the recap from the street fair, which happened on the 17th right after. Now, when we take a look at that cell phone data, we can actually prove now how many people are coming to these events. So when we take a look at the weekend, Thursday through Saturday, June 15th to the 17th, we know that we had 11,900 visitors downtown on Cheyenne Street in that area that we talked about. 11,400 is the total visit count. So we know that 500 people returned for both events. The average duration of stay was 97 minutes, which does lead to some pretty good commerce numbers. If you're going to make assumptions on if you're staying for an hour and a half, you're probably buying water, a Gatorade, maybe an adult beverage if you're of age, or participating in the street fair with all the different varieties and crafts that were available. As we take a look at the hourly visits, you'll see two peaks. The first one on the left side, that's from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., right around the lunch rush. We had a very large food court at both of our events. And you can see also in the early evening, just to the right, from about 6 to 8 p.m., we had another large spike in traffic. Now, a little over 2,000 people were there for about 30 minutes or less. But if you take a look at the far right side of the bottom on the length of stay, at that graphic, you'll see that a good majority of people, about 2,000, were there for over 150 minutes. So to be able to keep people's attention for that long on the two different days is fantastic. A couple other things that we think are valuable is just knowing where people are going, whether it's before, after, or even in the middle of these events. We know that when you're taking a look at the streetscape and the plaza itself, we had 6,300 people join us those days at those locations. The VFW Post actually has two data points on this. They must have just a slight variation in their address listing. So they actually were over 3,000 visitors. If we want to take a look at that, we add the 2,600 along with the 772. And then other places that did well, we had a lot of visitors that spent time at Walmart other than at our events. Shields did very well, as did the Flying Pig with over 1,000 people in one of our downtown locations there as well. All of this is great for our community to know people's travel patterns when they're here and spending time with us. My last two slides related to this. have to do with the daily visit trends. You might make an assumption that, well, downtown's going to be busy on a weekend anyway. And so we were really excited to see this. I wish I could zoom in a little bit closer here, but roughly, and it's over the 5,000 mark. On Thursday, over 5,000 people joined us for cruise night on the June 15th. When we take a look at Friday, we're right in between the 0 and 2,000 line on the marks there. So that tells us right around 1,000 people come downtown on a Friday. But then we shoot back up well over 6,000 people again for the street fair on that following Saturday. So we know that these events are drawing people specifically because of the activity, not just an average weekend that they're joining us downtown. The visit trend tracker just shows another graphic of the same information. We have 2 spikes, Thursday and Saturday, that coincide with our activity. Lastly, we do have some travel pattern data from people as well. They are blind on all of these things when it comes to cell phone data, but we do know that they came from their home 70% of the time, and then they returned home over 65% of the time afterwards. That leads us to believe that they're coming out directly because of the event, and they're going home after because they are done with their time in the downtown corridor. On our end of things at West Fargo Events, that's proof of concept that our staff are doing important work that we really do believe in. These statistics did come to us from the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Just to make sure everyone knows, we are not tracking economic data from people that are from West Fargo. This is visitor spending data. We know that the average person from Western North Dakota spent $94 on the weekend of June 8th to the 10th. They spent $107 on the weekend of June 15th to the 17th. And for example, we could go on and on about all of these different data points, but the marketing and the retargeting that the Convention and Visitors Bureau is working for us to be able to get data sets from where people are coming from, where they're spending their money, and how they are recreating with us on the weekends. When we take a look at the economic impact data for cruise night, this is one single day of visitor spending with their credit cards, not cash, within 58078. So credit card spending, our average visitor spend the week before on Thursday was $58 for a grand total of $127,000 in our zip code. When we had cruise night, the average visitor spend was $79, and we brought in a total of $147,000 from out-of-town spending on that Thursday. Keep in mind, cruise night is heavily cash. It is also heavily West Fargo. So we're still making big impacts through credit card data with visitors from all over the place. Another data point for you is the average visitor spending was $87 the Saturday before we had the street fair. Grand total of $153,000 came in from out of town on that weekend. When we take a look at the 17th, which was the street fair, average visitor spending $89 for a total of $163,617. So at least a $10,000 assumption of proof of concept there for you. Any questions on today's information?
Are we sharing this financial information with members of the, the yards downtown? How are we disseminating any of this information? Is this strictly through the site of West Fargo Events, or does our communications department for the city of West Fargo, are we also sharing this with some of our business community?
We would be willing to share this data with anyone, including the business community. This presentation came out of a recent West Fargo Events board meeting, and the board of directors found it valuable to understand all these statistics, so we brought it forward tonight.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else? Questions? Please, Commissioner Simmons.
Just a comment, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this came out of our board meeting, and you're the first to see it. And so we'll definitely be sharing this with really anybody who wants to see it. It's a great presentation. So it's definitely something we need to show people what we're paying for, what we're doing.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
And for the Convention and Visitors Bureaus to engage in that and to assist with the financial ramifications of some of these events is terrific. So hats off to them too. Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thanks all for your time.
This is an informational item, not an actionable item this evening. Thank you, Mr. Amundson. Item number 4 is the selection of a P3 developer for the West Fargo Sports Arena P3 project. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, several months ago, we as a commission voted to form a committee and put out a RFP to collaborate with the school district to take their property out there that is right now non-taxable and put it on the tax rolls. And it made good sense to do that. So we did put out the RFP. Unfortunately, we got one bidder back, but we knew in hindsight we wouldn't have many because there's not a lot of developers in this area that do P3s, that have that type of experience. So, but just, and Dustin will jump in a moment, but just give you an update, we still went through the entire process as far as grading them and evaluating them and seeing where they're falling into place. And now, all we're asking, we're not asking for the commission to make any decision on any funding or anything like that. All we want to do now is have the staff and some of the committee members sit down with the developer and just have the discussions about, okay, well, you know, what would this cost? What would that cost? Because we didn't even want to get into any of that without coming back to the commission. But I'll let Dustin do all the smart talking now.
Mr. Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. So, as Commissioner Simmons pointed out, this is really the next step in the process that the Commission set forth last year. Just want to reiterate that this does not commit the city to any dollars. This is really to start the discussions with the developer on further critiquing the concepts they did propose, laying out what will possibly work, continuing to look at the financial models that would be available. So again, can certainly jump into some of the graphics that Epic did provide us in their conceptual proposal. I believe Levi Bachmeyer, the school district business manager, is also in the audience, can help answer some questions as the school district is a partner of ours. But otherwise, I would stand for any questions that you had.
Just for public information, there was a public meeting held, 2 members of the school board, 2 members of the West Fargo City Commission, with the developer, with the business manager, with Mr. Scott. Am I missing anybody? There was a public meeting held in this facility about a week and a half ago, and the discussions were extremely preliminary as to how we're moving forward. And again, the P3 agreement was brought forward, a recommendation to do the research as to whether or not the city of West Fargo would work with the West Fargo public school system because by state statute, cities can do P3 developments, school districts cannot. So that's very preliminary as far as the discussion process and to the what-ifs, if you will. And there's been some preliminary financial impacts that we're also looking at there. So, obviously, if the city is going to engage in some type of business incentive, we as a commission have to be able to assess and qualify and quantify the return on our investment. And you can be assured we're going to do that. So, go ahead. Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Scott? There will be more public meetings. Stay tuned.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This is an actionable item, though,
Yes, sir.
but to
It is an actionable item, Commissioner Simmons.
Okay, so I make the motion that we move forward.
We have a motion by Commissioner Simmons for the selection of the P3 developer of the West Fargo Sports Arena project. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Olson. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Item number 5, the parking agreement with the Olson Family Properties We're going to call on Casey Sanders Berglund, our Economic Development Manager. Good evening, Ms. Berglund. Welcome.
Good evening, President Commissioner Dardis, Commissioners. In speaking about the downtown parking, on May 1st, the Commission held, or approved myself to move forward in creating both a construction lease, or a construction agreement and lease agreement with Olson Family Properties. So the property in discussion is at 223 3rd Avenue West in West Fargo, or visually directly behind Convertia Health on Cheyenne Street, or just east of that building. So the full lease and construction agreement is in the agenda packet. So the first being the portion of the construction of the parking lot using economic development sales tax dollars in the amount of $198,000 plus or minus 11%. The second portion of the lease outlines a annual lease for 10 years, which would also be funded and put in the budget with economic development sales tax dollars. This would bring forward 39 parking spots. It would be public parking spots, however, managed by Olson Family Properties. So what that means is each year we would pay a lease. However, Olson Family Properties would ensure the seasonal upkeep, like snow removal, as well as the administration and taxes. It's planned seal coating and stripping every 3 to 4 years, and total resurfacing approximately every 15 years. With that, I'd open it up to any questions in regards to the lease or construction of the project.
Just one technical thing. This discussion obviously started a number of months ago. Your signees for the city, former city administrator Tina Fisk's name is on there. That needs to be modified.
Sure.
Any other questions of Ms. Berglund?
Just
It's a
one,
minor point, technical point, but
just one comment.
Commissioner Olson.
There's a lot of Olsons around. I am not part of this.
I don't know
A lot
about
of
that.
Norwegians in this neighborhood, but I just want to make sure everybody understands I'm not related in any way, shape, or form to this entity.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other thing?
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you, Sarah. Has, John, have you gone through this entire, have we set this over so this is all done?
Yes, this has gone through our attorney's office.
It's all been gone through.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it wasn't brought forward last week, or last commission meeting, of some very slight modifications that we asked for, and discussions with Mr. Olson. He understood completely that, so
Correct.
this is an actionable item, Commissioners.
I would make a motion to approve if there's no further discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners. George, is it been moved and seconded to approve the parking agreement with the Olson Family Properties as presented by Ms. Berglund this evening? Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 6 is an enterprise grant for Greenhouse Business Center. Again, we're going to call on Casey Sanders Berglund, Economic Development Manager for the City of West Fargo.
Sure, thank you back. So this enterprise grant is in regards to already a West Fargo headquartered business called the Greenhouse Business Center. They are continually growing, and through this expansion, they've really been eyeing the vacant, more retail space in Pioneer Place. Really, they want to be part of the Downtown Yards community, and so they've applied for a $75,000 enterprise grant. In review of their application, I know I sent a full report to you all, but I just wanted to highlight a few things. Number one, community is one of their 5 core values, which is part of what's drawing them to the area and that they currently enjoy about West Fargo. And then, of course, they feel that this area also has some continuing promised growth. The Business Center, they also, if you're not familiar with what they do, they really aim to be a resource hub with a team of experienced business coaches, consultants, different strategic partners, not only from our region, but actually from all over our nation. They work with businesses in different stages, not only just starting businesses, but growing and expanding businesses, reorganizing, as well as some that are doing some succession planning. But at the core of what they do is they bring business leaders together that are the leaders or decision makers of that location or business entity, and they bring them into their location and they walk them through their kind of proven model that has a track record of success to ensure that they can help those businesses succeed at their goals, or reorganize some of the goals that they are trying to achieve. So currently, just some information, they have currently 27 clients. So if you think of each client bringing anywhere from 5 to 8 leaders on average, currently 2 of their clients really hail from our West Fargo area. So they typically come from Fargo, Moorhead, Bismarck, Grand Forks, as well as a handful from Minnesota currently. So if we look at that, that means anywhere from 135 to 216 leaders, decision makers, unique visitors to our downtown yards area. So right now, Patrick Metzger, if you recognize the name within our community, he's done a lot of engagements, speaking, and the like. He is the CEO and founder, as well as business coach. He is joined by a small but very fierce team of operations, business management, marketing, and recently, if you recognize the name Dr. James Lehman, who is former commissioner of North Dakota Department of Commerce, also city administrator for Ada, and has also had experience working in the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. He's just recently became a partner and director of strategic growth for the Greenhouse Business Center. So when it comes to this project, they are looking to fit up this remaining vacant space. It's just under approximately 3,100 square feet. The fit up is estimated currently at just over $390,000. They'll have 5 office spaces, a small and large conference room, training room, as well as an area for their employees, some storage and supplies. So lastly, part of our conversation during the Economic Development Advisory Committee, which did approve this or recommend this to you all unanimously, we did discuss parking, as that can be a challenge that we know downtown, related to just the last agenda item, but essentially knowing that their clients are going to come and spend anywhere from 5 to 8 hours a day at that location. I've had some lengthy conversations with almost the entire team at the greenhouse that moving in would also come with having some potential parking agreements set up prior to moving in for their staff and clients, so that they're not taking away highly sought after retail parking spots for their neighbors. And they understand they want to be good neighbors and respectful, and know that they have some opportunities with potentially Sandy's Donuts, a church across the street, for those parking agreements prior to them entering into a lease agreement with Epic Companies. So given this information, I have Preston Broughton here, who is their business development manager, to help answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, I will stand for questions.
Commissioner? Any questions, Ms. Berglund, or of the gentleman? This is an actionable item. The action is that we're approving a $75,000 grant. They meet all the
motion to approve.
qualifications. Pardon?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons, second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the enterprise grant for Greenhouse Business Center located in the Pioneer Center, as presented this evening by Ms. Berglund. Is there any further discussion?
Just
Please,
an item.
Commissioner Olson.
During the EDAC meeting, it was brought up that Greenhouse wants to bring these clients in here, and then they spend the day there. They're gonna visit the neighboring businesses and all that kinds of stuff, so, we're gonna get all the spin-off tax revenues, and the businesses will get all their revenues and all that, so it seemed, the EDAC committee was really enthused about it, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is regarding a FEMA hazard mitigation grant that Pierre Freeman, Emergency Manager for the City of West Fargo, and Dustin Scott, the Assistant City Administrator, will be presenting. This is in regard to 4 houses that are along the Cheyenne River, of which it is a FEMA buyout and not a City of West Fargo buyout. Mr. Scott and/or Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Commission President Dardis and members of the commission. Yes, I'm going to give a brief introduction and turn it over to Pierre, as he is the expert in this matter and the one that's been working on it over the past couple of years. Just a brief background. A few years ago, there were 4 different property owners that came forward to the city, not only the city staff, the DOT, other agencies as well have been involved over the past few years. Some of the commissioners that have been out here, to see firsthand some of the sloughing along the riverbank over the last several years. With all the different meetings that took place, this basically culminated in the city offering to move forward with helping these residents apply for a FEMA grant. Like you mentioned, Commission President Dardis, it's a pass-through grant, so we will take care of some of the transactions, or all of the transactions, and seek reimbursement through FEMA. This is a zero cost to the city, but because we are facilitating and administrating the grant, these purchase agreements that we'll be asking for you to approve tonight do need to be approved by the City Commission. But with that, I'll turn over the microphone to Pierre.
Good evening, Commissioner President and Commissioners. So, like Dustin said, we've been working on this grant for a couple years. We've brought forward from the DOT and from Dustin and from Tim Solberg in the past. They got me involved because of the mitigation process, and we do have to apply for that grant. The residents can't do it directly, so it has to come through the city to do that. So as I got involved, we started looking at how much money was available at the state. I started working with my state partners. We decided that out of the 4 houses, there'd be 1 that we could fund potentially through the grant. We started to apply for the grant. In that time process before the grant was awarded for the 1, the state reached back out to me and notified me that they probably would have money for all 4. So we started to go back to the residents and talk to them about their interest in being part of the full grant as a group. And also in that time, they notified me that the cost share would also be increased or decreased on our side, but the 75% would be increased to 90% as far as the federal funding, which would reduce all of the cost share down to 7% for the residents rather than a 15%. So that was a benefit for them as well. So with that, they all decided to go forward with the grant. We applied for the grant last summer. We were waiting for award. It came about January, and at that point, then we got the grant, and then I went back to the residents and we laid out all the math for the cost share, for how much the purchase of the houses would be. I had a budget for that, put it all together as far as the property values, what the acquisitions would be, the appraisal values, how much it would cost for that, demolition and so forth, asbestos testing and so forth. All of that gets reimbursed back to the city and back to the residents. The city essentially is a pass-through. We submit it for reimbursement. The state pays us back. The residents decided to go forward with this. We started to do appraisals, and in that time was around March and all that time. And I do apologize for not bringing this forward when we got the award. I know that probably is something that I should have done in the past. At least you guys are aware of this ahead of time. Things started to move quite fast. We Got all the residents based on the base offer after 2 appraisals. We had some appeals. That's part of the process of the grant. And then after that, everyone, all 4, basically have approved the offers. So now we're starting to move forward with what we would like to do with the purchase agreements and the closing and the acquisitions, and then furthermore demolition and so forth. So at that point, or this is where we are now, we're requesting the approval to more or less submit 4 purchase agreements for the prices that I think are in your packets. You can see that I had a budgeted amount, and I did 30% above the West Fargo values at the time because I was seeing in my other grants and stuff, prices and inflation was going up. So I added 30%. I'm glad I did that because if I had only added 10%, we'd probably be a little bit under budgeted, and I'd have to go back to the state to ask for more money. So in the packet, you also see what the appraisals are for each of those houses. That's what I anticipate the purchase agreements will be for. We will withhold 20%. That 20% is withhold in escrow so that we can essentially take the cost share and it gets pushed back onto the resident. That's part of the process typically in North Dakota. That way the city doesn't actually incur any cost besides my time, Dustin's time, and so forth. So, Dustin, you have a comment? Or,
Just gonna scroll down here.
thank you. So at this point, we are ready to make the purchase agreements and start moving forward with acquisitions of these homes, at least one of them. The other 4, because of timing and whatnot, we're not going to close on them. They need to find other residents. We had one resident who has already purchased another house. They've already moved out of town. They vacated the home. So they're ready to move forward a lot quicker than the others. So that's where we are. Any questions?
Questions? Mr. Scott?
Sorry, I guess I will jump in one last time. It's listed in the summary sheet here, but just want to point out that back in 2009, 2010, we did do a similar buyout. It was just one property on Francis Street. That was, basically the site was restored into a green space. Some years later, Public Works, the Forestry Department was able to convert that into a public orchard, which I think has been a great success. They've implemented some of those around town. It's a little bit too early to tell what we would do with this particular site, but something like that could be done. I do want to make it aware that using FEMA dollars to do this, that property is not usable for any other, call it structural purpose. You cannot rebuild on this property now. So, but with that, questions?
Thank you. Commissioner George?
Just a quick comment. A couple of years ago, I personally went out and looked at these properties, and it was scary how they're falling into the river and sliding in. And I'm really glad and thankful as a city that there's something we can do to help, and I'm glad to see that we can help these individuals out.
I want to commend Pierre, Mr. Freeman. This has been ongoing for 4 years. It's the first time I met with the property owners like Commissioner George and probably other commissioners, but to see the types of cracks, to see that their doors on the riverside would no longer open, I see an 1.5 inch crack in children's bedrooms and the like of what was transpiring out there. In the first meeting, we had the Director of Transportation for the state of North Dakota, Bill Panos, was there. Governor Burgum had representatives there. Obviously, Pierre was there. We had a couple of state representatives were in our first meetings, and it was, you know, the biggest concern was the time frame, that it's going to take a while to go through the process. So for Mr. Freeman to continue to work on this and to secure these grants for these great West Fargo people is commendable. It's the type of thing that the city employees should be doing when we can help the public, because these people were through no faults of their own, other than they owned a property adjacent to the Cheyenne River. It was amazing what was transpiring with their homes. It's heartbreaking to go walk through it and see what they had. So, good work.
Thank you.
One question.
Please.
Is there a timeline when this has to be completed by, all of these purchase agreements or anything like that? Does it?
Yes, there is a timeline. The grant is specific. We have about 1.5 years to essentially finish all of this for reimbursement. My timeline is a little bit earlier because I know that the residents want to move out. We also, once we get a closing date, I have 90 days to essentially put that property into perpetuity of level grass seeded. So there's that timeline. Other than that, it's a year and a half. It really depends upon when the other residents can find somewhere to move, then we can close and go from there. So we're not trying to push them out. We're letting them take their time. We want to let them search while the market's still good for them to find housing stock.
The action we're taking this evening is approving the grant, basically, which requires us to sign off on that, the city of West Fargo.
Just a matter of technicality, we're approving the 4 purchase agreements within the grant program.
Parameters.
Yeah.
Again, this is not costing West Fargo taxpayers any property tax money or any sales tax money. Just to be very clear on that. We have had, obviously, Pierre's been very invested with some of his time, but that's part of what he does for our emergency director, so. So we are looking for a motion to approve the FEMA hazard mitigation grant this evening.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the FEMA hazard mitigation grant as presented this evening by Pierre Freeman, Emergency Manager for the City of West Fargo, and Dustin Scott, the Assistant City Administrator for the City of West Fargo. And it's the authorization of 4 purchase agreements. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 8 this evening is the designation of a master construction company incorporated as a non-responsible bidder for roadway and underground utility projects. Mr. Dan Hansen, City Engineer for the City of West Fargo. This is an actionable item this evening. The action that Mr. Hansen is looking for is to approve a resolution declaring Master Construction Incorporated as a non-responsible bidder for roadway and underground utility projects in the City of West Fargo. Mr. Hansen, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. I don't come with this item lightly, as they are a contractor. That Master Construction has been a contractor working in West Fargo for a number of years. However, I can't look the other way anymore at the performance that we've seen from them on recent projects over the past couple of years. My goal isn't to stand up here and go through item by item. Those are included in the resolution with some examples of some projects, issues that we've had with Master Construction in both completing our projects on time as well as being in communication with us. An example of, just one example of that would be a recent, the 1310 project that was listed. They had mentioned that they were going to finish up with a punch list this past spring. I reminded them of that. They said as soon as spring, the snow clears, they would be able to take care of that work. Since then, I've sent them numerous emails asking when they intend to get back out there, even so far as going to say, respond by tomorrow. I shouldn't have to give timelines on responsiveness, and I got no response from that as well. So I have just not had any communication with them on this, and so they do other work in town. We're talking about just underground utility work, roadway work on municipal projects, surface improvements. They do have a operation that installs dry utilities such as cable TV and things of that nature that we would still allow them to do their work on with that. But what this would do is it would basically place an 18-month moratorium on Master Construction being able to bid on projects in the City of West Fargo. And with that, I can get into as much detail as you'd like or stand for questions.
Questions from Mr. Hansen? I'd note on page 160, the liquidated damages that the city is entitled to or were able to reduce because of failure to comply with the contract details was well administered, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for Mr. Hansen? Commissioners?
Thank you. Mayor, thank you.
Please.
Dan, I see it does not preclude Master from continuing to install utilities and drywall work, utility work, such as cable phones. Why why would we allow them, I guess, to do that if we're,
Those are projects that we don't contract. They're done through,
okay, so they're.
yeah, they're not, those are
Sure,
not
third
city
party? Sure,
contracts.
okay, that
And
makes sense.
as far as I know, they perform well in that service.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just one more.
Please, Commissioner Simmons.
I'm just gonna assume, which isn't a good thing to do, that this has gone through our city attorney and that, you know, we're not breaking any laws or anything like that.
Mr. Shockley wrote the resolution for me.
Okay.
You drew up the agreement, yeah.
Have we gone after their bond yet for some of the work that hasn't been completed?
Part of the contract is the liquidated damages that Commissioner President Dardis mentioned. When they have not performed and went over their contract times, we have assessed those liquidated damages to what is owed to the city through those contracts. And through that process, they have not fought on paying those liquidated damages. So as far as the contract language goes, part of the contract is if you finish 100 days late, you pay this much liquidated damages. So they did that. They did execute the contract in the way that they paid the liquidated damages. However, the final statement that I had made is with every project that the city of West Fargo enters into a contract to have improvements constructed, there's an expectation that the contractors pursue the work on the project and make efforts to complete the project by the completion dates listed in the contract and provide prompt communications. The City of West Fargo taxpayers and the residents deserve projects to be completed in a timely fashion. When projects aren't completed, our taxpayers are still dealing with construction, dealing with not having that important work done, and so there's eventually it's time to just take a pause, and then eventually when this moratorium is complete and master does come back bid in the city of West Fargo, I would ask for some references from current clients that they have to verify that they have been able to complete projects in a timely fashion at that point. But at this point, it's just time to take a break, in my opinion.
Okay.
Again, Commissioners, the action we're looking for is to approve a resolution declaring Master Construction as a non-responsible bidder for roadway and underground utility projects.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the resolution declaring Master Construction as a non-responsible bidder for roadway and underground utility projects. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is the Sandhill 6th edition. Again, Mr. Dan Hanson, City Engineer for the City of West Fargo, will be presenting. It's to create an improvement district number 1335, approve an engineer's report, direct engineer to prepare both a task order for basic services along with the plans and specifications, and approve a resolution of necessity. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. In the packet is the Sandhill 6th edition. If you recall, in May, the Commission accepted petitions for the development from 2 separate developers that are adjacent to the part that own the project site and another developer that is adjacent to the project site. And we authorized some preliminary engineering to begin, and we set up escrow accounts so that the city would be able to hold those monies in escrow in the event that the project was to fall through. The project is going to create infrastructure to service the proposed areas with roadways and utilities to support the development. What we're asking for tonight, again, is to approve the engineer's report that was put together based off of the preliminary engineering that our consultant did for us, and create the improvement district. I'm going to jump down into the packet, just past the engineer's report, just to show a graphic representation of what we're talking about here. Hopefully it'll clear up a little bit, or maybe not, but what you see in this area is there's basically a loop of roadway that would go through the Sandhills 6th edition, And the Sandhill 7th edition, which is referenced, is actually an adjacent property owner that owns this lot that heard of these improvements that were going to happen and wanted to be a part of the project. And so included with that is the construction of some stormwater ponding and sanitary sewer, water main, and storm sewer to service this development. The action item of improving the district, once this clears up, you'll see this black dashed line is the outskirts of the improvement district that we're asking to be created. I wanted to be very specific that there's been a lot of talk in this development from the property owners that are out there that are not the developers with respect to special assessments and with respect to development occurring near their properties. Right now, even though all of these properties on the north side of this improvement district are included within the improvement district, they are not intended to be a special assessed anything for this project. The intent would be to include them in the assessment district in the event that we move forward with the project and say they were to approach the city and say, you know what, we've changed our mind, we would like sewer and water services, and if we were to expand the scope of the project, they would be included inside of the assessment district with the approving of the resolution of necessity tonight. That would set up a public hearing where anybody within the assessment district, they will get a letter mailed to them, even the private property owners on site, but their letter would say that there would be a $0 assigned estimated assessment for their parcels. So rest assured that those private individuals that we've been in discussions with are not being assessed for this project. Jumping down to the next benefit methodology map, you can see there's a blue line around the outside of the area that would be included within the assessed areas. Right now, the way that it is shown, from 4th Avenue Northwest, the roadway and utilities will be constructed connecting that all the way down and and eventually going east to 26th Street as shown in the previous slide. There are two parcels that are not owned by the developers of this property that are contained within this blue line, which would be the local benefit area that would have an assessment because there are improvements that are happening adjacent to their properties in the way of constructing a brand new street, as well as utilities that are going to be able to be serviced by those properties. That would be this property on the northwest side, I believe owned by the Archery Club, and then the Hazer property just off of 26th Street Northwest. So as of right now, the way that the feasibility study was prepared by the consultant accurately shows who benefits from this project, and it did include these properties as benefiting parcels from the project due to the improvements that are going to be occurring right next to them. Eventually, we're not setting that these are for sure going to be assessed, but they do benefit from this project. Eventually, this will go in front of the Special Assessment Commission and then eventually come back for the final assessments to be certified. But it was prudent that the engineer, when they put the feasibility study together and reflected in my engineer's report, that there was benefiting parcels that do intend to be assessed, and those are outside of the petitioned developers. So I wanted to point those two properties out to the commission, and they will get letters that do state of an intended assessment from this district, and they would have their ability to come to the protest hearing from the resolution of necessity, which we would have in August. So that kind of paints the picture of where the project is located. The total cost for the project, according to the feasibility study, once this clears up, is estimated to be $7,360,000. And right now, this is just shown as a city-funded project that will be assessed. This doesn't take into account the previously Previously at a commission meeting, staff was approved to work with legal and admin to negotiate the potential purchase of some right-of-way for a future 26th Street. That is not included in any of these costs. That would be something that would be separate from this project. The developer is getting some appraisals of that property, so those negotiations haven't started yet, but we are anticipating that they would begin shortly. So in summary, what we're here to do would be to create that improvement district, approve the engineer's report, and then approve the creation of the plans and specifications and pass that resolution of necessity. That way we were able to have that public hearing at the August meeting. And with all of that, I would stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Commissioners? Commissioner George?
Those two separate property holders, Hazers and one other, has anybody talked to them about this? Like, since there's only two.
They have not been contacted as of yet. We received the feasibility study, put the engineer's report together, and based off of what the result of tonight's meeting, they would be contacted immediately with that letter.
It just concerns me a little bit that it's obviously being done for the one developer. And I get nervous about these types of things, like if they didn't want it or wouldn't have done it anyway, but now they're being charged for something they may or may not want. That just concerns me to vote for something until they've, had a say or, been informed or something. That's my concern on this, I guess.
Yeah, I can very much appreciate that, and that's something with assessed projects that happens very routinely, where there's a project that happens in a vicinity. I mean, you take a look at recent special assessed projects. There's people that are either adjacent to or maybe even in a regional area that get assessed that are possibly not in favor of the project, but as a result, they did have benefit. Say that we did not, say that the Special Assessment Commission and eventually this commission chooses not to include them in any special assessments, well, they would still have the project happen fronting their property, would increase the value because it would be serviceable, and then they would be able to turn around and sell it with the benefit of having the free project out front as well. But again, yeah, they're not asking for this.
Right, and it's clearly not done for them. It's clearly done for the other one.
Yep,
So.
it's absolutely being done as a result of two petitioners that do want the project.
Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm trying to understand this now. You want a motion to approve the necessity, but yet that'll give them the opportunity to come and speak about their concerns, right?
Yep, yes.
Will it automatically, but I thought I heard you say there's going to be a zero assessment anyway towards them.
Those two parcels would be included in the assessments.
So they wouldn't get the assessment anyway.
No, they would. It's the residential properties that wouldn't.
It's everybody other than those two owners would not be charged.
Oh, they would get
assessments.
They would get assessed.
These people would be assessed for the project because they do have, according to the feasibility study, there is benefit to those properties based off of this project.
But hasn't there been correspondence with the developer with regard to that, of special assessments to the residential owners in this blocked area?
Yes, there was absolutely discussions with the developers that there would be, it would not be looked upon favorably if those private residences were to be assessed for the project. These two parcels are owned more by commercial, the archery club, whether you call that commercial or not, but as well as the Hazers properties. Those are not parcels that were included in those discussions as far as basically the intent was not to assess the private residences that were in the vicinity of the project, such as the cocaine property and that nature.
That's not the way it was represented to me. So I find that interesting, and I'm in the same position as Commissioner George on this.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be additional discussions with that developer, forcing residential folks that live there. I'm not in favor of that. I'll tell you straight out.
It's not the residential properties, it's the two small businesses, the Archery Club and Hazers, that would be assessed, even though they're not asking for it. So it's 0 to the residential,
they
but,
wouldn't get it.
0 to the private residences that
Right.
live out there.
but,
The archery and who?
and Hazer.
And the Hazer property, I can go back to the map here.
Okay, very good.
Because they may, is this?
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep, this parcel right here, which is owned by the Archery Club, and this parcel adjacent to 26th Street, that is owned by the Hazers.
Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Simmons?
I want to make sure I'm on the same one that we talked about, where it looks like I approved in the past. So we're referring here to where the developer went out and offered the homeowners, and went back and forth quite a few times coming up, right?
Correct.
And the Hazers property is just that, vacant, isn't it?
There's, to my knowledge, been no discussion between the developers and the Hazers.
There hasn't been, it's just been with the homeowners. And I want to commend them because I think they did a great job with that, working that out, but I don't know, I'm sorry, Looksley.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
No.
but I just want to point out that the Hazers property is a residential property that is occupied. So it's
But it's
just not one of the other
commercial.
residential
Okay.
properties that have come forward. And so when the developer was talking about
That's why I
buyouts,
agreed with you.
Yeah.
they were talking about the other residential properties out there.
They were talking about the Gress Avenue properties for
But they were
those.
gonna assess the Hazers residential and the Archery, oh,
But they wouldn't, and again, I just want to make sure I'm on the same page as you guys here. They wouldn't negotiate with them. Is that correct with the Hazers I mean, they don't want to sell, period, right? Am I talking about a different,
No, you're right.
am I on the right property here?
No, and I am not aware of discussions between the developers and the Hazers.
Well, I think they need to have discussions. I mean, I thought they did, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean,
We've got a representative from the consultant here that has been part of these discussions that might have some information to add.
Please step to the microphone and introduce yourself to us. Good evening.
Good evening. Matt Prokniak with Moore Engineering. To my knowledge, they have reached out to the Hazers originally once and didn't receive any feedback from them, and that's kind of where the conversation stopped. So.
yeah, I want to make sure, I'm sorry, Mayor, but that's what I've heard and been told, that we reached out, or they reached out a couple times and there's been no conversation, so it's pretty,
Once to the
Once.
Hazer organization.
and what about the other one?
Numerous.
the Archery.
Okay, that's the one, okay.
That's what I was aware of. So again, Mr. Hanson is looking for, to create an improvement district this evening. With your point, Commissioner Simmons, we could put in there as a covenant that that developer or the city reach out to the Hazers one more time.
I think,
you'd
and
like.
the Archery Club.
And/or the archery club, yeah.
We definitely could.
I'm okay with making that motion if they reach out again, and I mean, and all, to give them a lot of commitment. They've negotiated a lot of this land and gotten it, and it, number one, we need part of that land out there. For I-94, we need that interchange section.
the future, yep.
For the future, so I think it's prudent and our responsibility to do the very best we can to purchase that property.
That's not part of this, though.
No, not, additional discussions.
But, right, but I'm saying we're gonna need that at some point, that's my point, so. I think I would go with the motion that you reach out to them, with them two both. And try to get some more conversation going with them and see if you can get us to tell them what they want.
I have a motion to create an improvement district number 1345 with a covenant as discussed here this evening. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Is there any further discussion?
I guess I'm still a little bit concerned, like, with that motion. Like, I mean, I appreciate that the conversation is there, but what if they say no? Like, what if they're like, no, we don't want this, but they're gonna get charged? I mean, I don't know how much money we're looking at, you know, I mean, I just hate to do that.
Well, again, this does not, by approving this, it does not assess those properties. It just
I know, but it will.
includes them
We know how this goes. So,
where it goes.
Well, not if we vote against it.
well,
Yep. Eventually, the Special Assessment Commission, and ultimately, this commission makes the final determination on those assessments.
right, because if we vote, like you said, we just know how this goes. If we vote for it, it's going to happen. So, I don't know, I want to hear what Robin has to say.
Mr.
Well, I was
Commissioner
gonna-
Anderson.
I was going to say something along the same lines that, you know, we're talking a lot here about we're going to special assess them. We're not right now. That's not what's in the plan here. They do fall within that benefited area, but I know one thing's for damn sure is I'm going to be pushing, if this continues, that we take a hard look at their true benefit, because if this development is happening through no fault of their own, do they need to pay for that
Right.
or a portion of it?
Exactly.
One could argue very strongly that they don't. So that's where I'm at, and I don't want to hold up a project necessarily, so my vote is going to reflect all of these thoughts that I've got going in my head that I can't, it'll take too long to spew out, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not against the project. I'm just kind of against making people pay for it that shouldn't have to pay for it.
Yeah, if they're not going to hook up to water and sewer and the like, what is the true benefit of the property then?
Right, because
Other
they
than-
wouldn't have done it
Other
otherwise,
than
there's
its
no way.
accessibility for easy hookup if should that property turn to someone else. I have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor of, to create an improvement district number 1345, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried, 4-1 vote. Item number 10, manhole rehabilitation project. Again, we call on Mr. Dan Hansen, our city engineer. And the purpose of this discussion is to create a project number 1347 and award a contract. Mr. Hansen.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. This is a project that was in our 2022 CIP in an effort to reduce the inflow and infiltration into our sanitary sewer that we pump to Fargo, and we get charged for everything that we pump to Fargo. Public Works is proactively looking at ways to limit that water from entering our sanitary sewers. There are identified 44 aging manholes that they would like to have a contractor come in and basically reline to, again, enhance the structural integrity of the manholes as well as ensure that they're watertight to reduce the I&I on the system, which would, again, lead to less sewage being pumped to Fargo. We solicited quotations for this work from 4 different contractors that we know that do this work. We received 3 proposals back of the 4, and the 4th one said that they were not able to provide us a quote. And the Key Contracting was the lowest bidder in the amount of $150,732. CC Steel LLC was the second low bidder at $156,565. Looking at the proposals in their entirety, CC Steel has a 10-year warranty on their product, and Key Contracting has a 2-year warranty on their product. So taking into account the value of the bid as well as the amount of warranty period that we would have on their product, working with Public Works, we would suggest that we award the contract to CC Steel. And I apologize on the staff recommendation. I had the wrong dollar amount written there. So we would be looking to create this project 1347. There would be no, this would be capital improvement sales tax that pays for this. There would be no assessments for this project. But we would be recommending that we award the contract to CC Steel in the amount of $156,565. Again, they were the second low bid, but combined with the additional 8 years of warranty of their product, working with Public Works, we felt that that was in the best interest of the city for that award. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Commissioners, any questions? Again, the discussion is to create a project number 1347 and award a contract.
Make motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the creation of project number 1347 and award a contract to CC Steel LLC for $156,565 with the notation that this bidder was chosen because of its extended warranty. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 11 is project number 2261, a 2023 mill and overlay project. Mr. Hanson, city engineer, will be presenting. Again, this is to approve a task order number 69-2 for basic services and to direct the engineer to prepare plans and specifications. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. If you recall, at the February 6th Commission meeting, we had a presentation for a mill and overlay project of several neighborhoods. At that meeting, the Commission approved the engineer's report, passed the resolution of necessity, and directed the engineer to prepare a task order for the basic services. It was shortly after that meeting, we put the project on hold due to our, with the finance department, we wanted to make sure with this project that we were secure with our funding, and so it was decided that we were going to push the construction of this project into 2024. So even though it says 2023 mill and overlay project, the intent would be that this work would be done in 2024. I'd like to proceed with what the commission had asked the consultant to do, is to prepare the task order for basic services to get them going on the design, so that way we can get the design on the shelf and be one of the first bids out there this winter. I'll go back into just to give you an idea of, again, because it's been since February, the areas that we're proposing to be milled and overlaid are showing up on the screen. The South Pond area, Maple Ridge area, West River, Shadowwood, Reserve at Osgood, first edition, as well as Westport Beach and the Wilds, first, second, fourth, and 14th editions. Those are the areas that we would be looking to overlay. And so basically what this request does today is it gets the consultant approval to begin work on the plans and specifications. Approximately half of those areas will be designed in-house. The task order for the consultant is for them to design the other half that the city would not be designing. We intend to design those in conjunction with each, working together, so that way the plans and specifications look similar. They're not different, but we would be designing approximately half of this project in-house. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Questions for Mr. Hanson? Commissioner Anderson.
All right, so I live on the north side of town. I know a lot of people do. I guess the question I have is, what would you tell someone from the core area that asks you why there's a mill and overlay project being done in newer areas while their streets are falling apart?
I appreciate that question. More money flowing to the south side while we're not paying attention to the core area. And what I would say is, I've got a handout that I printed out. This is a maintenance project, and it's a prevention from these roadways deteriorating so that we don't have to reconstruct them sooner. Let me hand this out if I could.
Mayor,
Commissioner.
can I give a little history while Dan is handing those out just real
Please
quick?
do
Because
so.
I've been around long enough to know that, because I live also kind of by Robin. The problem we have in our area is that we can't mandate to redo the streets without getting a vote by the citizens. And all these years, we've been unable to get those votes. People just don't want to pay for it. Now, sewer and water is different. We can redo that and assess them. But streets, you can't. So I remember years ago in Maple, our area where I'm at, we tried to push through, Dustin, you were with more, I think, at the time, tried to push through a project, and we just can't do it. And so at least, I guess, I don't like this either. I mean, I'd rather have us do, and I was gonna ask that question, what's our plans for north side? But I do understand why we have to do this now on the south side. This is basically preventive maintenance, so they don't get into the shape that we're in.
Right, exactly. We need to be proactive so it doesn't happen, right? And that's part of why I brought it up too. It's, I meet with them regularly, we've discussed this, but there might be other people that aren't aware, at least I want, make sure it's out there and we talk.
Mayor knows I like to throw a little history out once in a while when I can remember it, so.
Just a little.
All valuable.
So in the handout that I just provided, the source is the National Center for Pavement Preservation. Basically, at about the 15-year mark, you can see the blue dashed line that has your typical pavement deterioration. After 15 years, it heads south fairly quickly. With mill and overlays at the 15-year mark and a lot excuse me, and also you can do that at the 30-year mark as well if it's holding up as well. It revitalizes the surface, it gives a new layer to deteriorate and protects the base of it, and it extends the life cycle of the roadways. And according to this document here, basically it says spending $1 on pavement preservation at the point that we are at eliminates or delays spending $6 to $14 on the rehabilitation or the reconstruction at some point. Now, when we talk about the core area, we're basically talking about asphalt that is generally between 45 to 60, 65 years old. That's not even on the chart. A lot of those areas are beyond the point of maintenance, where they are in the need of the reconstruct. And the other thing is on the south side, we've got PVC utilities underneath. The sewer and the water are PVC. On the north side in the core area, we've got asbestos concrete pipe for water main in many areas. We've got vitrified clay pipe, the VCP clay tile pipe as our sewer lines in a lot of those core areas. And really the underground utilities is going to drive the core area reconstructs that we're going to be needing to do. And there is a significant amount of them to do. Recently, to analyze this, the commission approved a study that's currently being done by a consultant, More Engineering, that is going to be taking the previous core area study and updating it and coming back to us with a list of here's the first 8 projects that we're going to want to be able to do in the core area that we would be coming back to present here by the end of by this fall, hopefully that early, if not just early winter, where we can take a look at the core area and start really planning those out. I do have a project that is, again, on the shelf for the core area that was very highly rated as far as a need in the original core area study. I feel that when we get our report back from the consultant, that the Westwood neighborhood, that will be very high on their study as well. And so that is one that we're going to need to discuss as far as we do. But again, the costs for doing that are with our current 60-40 split for reconstructions, the estimated assessments for those parcels is anywhere between $40,000 to $80,000 after we've paid our share, which I believe we need to have another discussion on exactly the type of funding that we want to be able to use for that. So I would stress we are looking at the core. We're conducting a study to put together a CIP of how we're going to be able to tackle it. But we'll also need to have a conversation between with the commission as far as percentages, special assessments, potential caps on special assessments, potential moving forward, how do we want to be able to do this so that we're not special assessing people out of their homes in the core area. So again, going back to the current ask, this is a pavement preservation project, so that way the south side does not end up with the 45 to 60-year-old asphalt that hasn't had the overlays.
Mr. Scott had some point he wanted to make.
Yes, thank you for letting me interrupt. So Dan makes a lot of great technical points, but back to your question, Commissioner Anderson. Years ago, and this is just a history, like this is well before me, but my understanding is that there were a lot of streets in the core area that were overlaid, at least once, if not twice. I don't have the exact locations of all those overlay projects. I know there's some historical plans within the engineering department, but I just wanted to point that out. That some of these streets were overlaid, when it was the best time to do so. Commissioner Simmons, to your point, yes, there was, back in 2008, we had a series of street projects that we had presented, and they were voted out. So, but along with Dan's technical explanation, I just wanted to point out that some of these streets were overlaid years ago.
And they've hit the life cycle that these streets will eventually get to here in the next 20, 30 years.
Commissioner?
Yeah, so I mean, to kind of piggyback on what everybody else is saying, so I mean, we've got Center Street, right, which is an old street in horrible condition, right? And we milled and overlaid that recently. It's great, because I drive on that one all the time. It's so much better than all the potholes, and that's an old street that, you know, I get it, it's a Band-Aid, but it's like, okay, so these people in the core neighborhoods, they feel ignored, and I don't blame them, because it's like, why don't, even though we maybe milled and overlaid them before, let's do it again, let's do it again, let's do it again, okay, fine, you know, that's gonna avoid all those huge special assessments. You know, I don't feel good about throwing resources to the new neighborhoods and continuing to ignore the core neighborhoods, because that is what I feel like we're doing, because it's like, well, they can't pay for the special assessment, so we're just gonna do nothing. We're not even gonna give them a Band-Aid, you know, and I get this, like, I understand that, you know, what this is, but I don't feel good about continuing to ignore them and not even give them a Band-Aid, because if we even milled and overlaid it to just smooth their street, I mean, that would like make them feel better, you know? I don't know, it would be something versus potholes, you know?
I don't know that you can, though, when it gets too bad. Can you even do an overlay on it? Isn't that part of the problem?
Did you drive on Center, how horrible that was? It's good now. So.
But they milled it.
Yeah, well, Center got milled, and I believe it had a concrete foundation that they built back up on. Can you mill and overlay a 50-year-old street? Yes, you can mill and overlay any street. Some of it during construction, if it's old enough and the asphalt is deteriorated where the oil has left it, could crumble underneath the paving operations. So there are some challenges to it. You drive the core area, and there are still some streets that have a crown that aren't completely rubbleized, that you look at and you say, why couldn't we just do that with this one? And on some streets, you could. I believe if we were to put together a mill and overlay project for the core area, it would be this street would work, that street would work, and we could do that part of that street over here, you know. But if you drive like 6th, for example, to get from here out to the 13th, that street is not able to be mill and overlaid. That just needs to be reconstructed, for example. You could go over and over in different examples. So some streets you could, and if you notice, Public Works, they did the work on Center Street, and they did an excellent job for not being a paving contractor. That I'm very complimentary towards their work. Part of what they do, if you realize out front of City Hall, there was a lot of potholes, and they milled and overlaid that. They milled and overlaid part of the, you know, where 6th Street hits 7th, I believe, is the intersection. They did some of that. So some of the patching is done by Public Works, and we could look to put a Band-Aid on some of these things, for one thing. I know they've talked in Meadow Ridge, there's some areas that they could potentially go in there where it's literally sumped 2 inches below the curb. They could go in there and like you say, put the patch on there. I don't think that those patch jobs are very well suited for a bonded and assessed project. This project here would be assessed for the overlay portion of this.
That just adds a whole nother layer.
Well,
Okay.
and that's what was.
That's another big no there. Okay.
Somebody's gotta pay.
No, that means I guarantee they don't want it either.
Absolutely, and at the February 7th meeting, we presented all the costs, the assessments, and things of that nature. And this, for today's purposes, we've went past that. I do think that I'm going to need to bring back the feasibility study, because I'm going to want the consultant to take a look at the feasibility study that they originally put together, anticipating that construction was going to be taking place this year. And if you recall, from that feasibility study and engineer's report, the city was going to pay for all the ADA improvements along adjacent to these projects. And then also the city was going to pay for any regional roadways such as 9th Street. We were not going to plan on assessing that. It was just the local streets that are fronting houses that are going to get overlaid that would be assessed. And in all of the previous overlay jobs that we have done, those have been 100% assessed, so there is a history of having those projects be assessed. I don't feel comfortable with the temporary patches being a capital improvement project where we would assess, because how long do you assess them? Center Street, we're hoping to get, we're likely to get 5 years out of what we did. We're hoping to get 10 if we could, or until we get funding to reconstruct that roadway. But with our typical assessments and how long you would need to string out the assessments, to say you came into Meadow Ridge and you were going to do a mill and overlay and assess them for 15 years, those streets where it's bad and an overlay does not, all the cracks come through an overlay, it's a flexible pavement, and so we anticipate even in when you overlay these streets, the cracks that are there are going to show up through it eventually.
How long do you think? I mean, 5 years, 10 years, could it get them through until the pipes and everything need to be done?
The bad, in this, are you talking on the current project that we're proposing?
No, I'm talking about, say, in a core neighborhood that already has a big crack. I mean, how long should a mill and overlay be able to cover up a pothole or a crack?
For a pothole, it should last a couple years, but you'll see the major cracks coming through in the first year of an overlay. You'll start to see that cracking being reflected, and a lot of that comes down to how cold does it get, how hot does it get, how much does it flex. But you will see the cracking appear in the worst areas in year one. But the point of the patch, the skin patch just to get by, isn't to prevent that. It's to say we can at least drive across this for another 5, 6, 7 years, so that way we can get to the point where we can have a capital improvement project that's affordable to the residents as much as possible. If that makes sense.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm at. So this whole thing, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but these people have already been assessed to no end. And I know these people don't want to be assessed again for a relatively new road. Now, I get it preserves the life, but yet, if there's something we could do, to get those other people through, that's where I'd rather see resources go versus doing it to a new road that these people probably don't even want it, so.
I'll say this, we have fielded a lot of calls from the neighborhood of, the road is bumpy, there are potholes, there's some curb and things like that. So I think there is an appetite from the residents that want the project. It's the money part of it that.
Right, because then you got to tell them, well, you're going to have to pay, I don't know, $5,000 for it. How much are they going to support it then?
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's going to pay for it?
Nobody, don't do it.
Well, yeah, but then the roads are going to go bad.
Yeah, but they're already bad up north, and I think those people would actually be more willing to pay that $5,000 over 30 years to have the road fixed.
Excuse me, Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, so to your point, Commissioner George, back February 6th, part of the motion that I made to approve this project was to start looking at other options so we can reduce the special assessments. And here, under the financial analysis, it does say that a workshop with City Commission in the near future is planned to discuss what these costs, or what percent of these costs will be assessed. So that's something that I feel like we need to talk about as a commission and get a lot of financial data behind it to kind of model out what we can and can't do. I know some things have been talked about in the past, and there are currently some policies, like traditionally 100% assessed for a project like this, but is that something that we're comfortable doing, or can we look at alternatives? So that's why I made that motion back in February. So
Yeah, and I just feel like that's not happening. We're just continuing to do it the same old way. It's we talk about talking about it, but then we don't, and so I don't.
We had a bit of a hiccup, right, with finance. So, but we're moving beyond that now.
And if I could add, at the February meeting, we did pass the resolution of necessity. We chose, obviously we postponed the project, but we did not send the letters out to the residents stating, here's what we anticipate your specials will be, because we still need to meet with the commission and talk about that funding source. That way, so it would be a number of different things that we want to look at. Number one is for us to meet and discuss exactly what Mr. Anderson said, as far as the funding of it. We don't want to send those letters out if all of a sudden we come back together and we choose it's going to be a 50-50 instead of a 100 or an 80-20. We want to wait to send those letters out and have that hearing until after we're all on the same page of what we want to do as a policy for these rehabilitation projects. So I understand, but we're still just moving forward and doing it and assessing them. I really do understand your concern.
Yeah.
And we are taking that into consideration by waiting to send out those letters until we're all on the same page with it, which I hope to have that discussion soon. I know we're in the middle of a budget cycle and we had some, turnover in the finance department, but I think we're on a steady ground now that after we get through this budget cycle, we should be able to hopefully have that that workshop very soon, because we would want to have those meetings and send those letters out as soon as possible.
I've mentioned this before. I did a ton of campaigning in that area, a lot of door knocking, and so many people told me, they're like, I will support you if you vote no to any new special assessments in our area. And I just,
That's such an
I know, but that's what
easy
this
thing.
is. You know, something like a specific project that has a specific purpose, fine, but I'm not just gonna go special sense of a neighborhood like this. I'm just not gonna do that.
Mayor, may I?
Please.
Thank you, and that's your prerogative, and I understand that, but from someone that has full disclosure, 2 families that live out here, it gets pretty rocky, and they agree. They're willing to step up and get their roads paid. They understand that somebody's got to pay those assessments. Now, I'm not speaking for everybody at all, so, and you campaigned out there, I get that, but at the same time, I don't feel we should hold one area hostage because the other part of town isn't being done. They're 2 separate issues. We definitely have to take care of the old part of town. I have no question, totally 100% on board, but I don't feel we should be holding the south side of town hostage. And that's kind of what we're doing in essence. They're going to be assessed out. These people are going to have time to come in front of us and complain, I'm assuming, correct?
Yep, we will have that
So we'll have
same
plenty of opportunity to hear them and go through the process. But I am a firm believer, being around as long as I have, with these roads, that if we don't do something, they're gonna be like downtown. Then what are we gonna do? Then we're gonna have the whole area looking like that. So I do believe we have to maintain them and keep them up. And again, whether you like it or not, somebody has to pay for it. And why should somebody, most certainly on the north side of town, that's just my opinion, I'll pay for something on the south side of town. I mean, I get that we gotta figure out better ways to do it, and we'll work on it. But I don't think we should hold anybody up. And I think so with that, I'll make the motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve project number 2261, 2023 Mill and Overlay Project as presented by Mr. Hanson, and to approve a task order of 69-2. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Simmons?
Can I have, perhaps, it won't make any difference with, I'm sure with Commissioner George, but a caveat in there that just so it's stated that we continue to look for other sources to pay for these projects?
I'd have to ask for approval of the second.
Yes.
Is that okay?
It is approved. So there is an amendment to the original motion to continue to research additional funding methods for these improvements. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes on a 4-1 vote. Moving on to item number 12, project number 9038, bank stabilization. It's at 622 Morrison Street. Mr. Hanson again. He's looking, the purpose of this discussion is a project update and awarding of some contracts. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. In the current CIP, we have the listed in there, if you recall, we purchased a 622 Morrison Street. It was a parcel that the city currently owns that we purchased with the intent that we'd eventually install a storm sewer lift station on that parcel. That storm sewer lift station, and I'll go down into this exhibit here, the intent would be to install that on that parcel, and it would pump its water into this basically oxbow of the Cheyenne River. It's adjacent to 7th Avenue West for perspective. Over the years, this channel bank has been eroding. It has shown some signs that, and let me just back up a little bit. A consultant has been flying LiDAR, so basically doing a flyover topographical survey to measure if there's any changes in the movement of the land. And they have noticed that there has been some changes in this area as far as bank erosion. The installation of a future storm sewer here, storm lift station here, is going to be injecting water out into that oxbow. So we've been working with Pierre to go, and we secured $100,000 worth of grant funding to study this area, and the purpose of it is to protect our infrastructure. Right at this bend that I'm pointing out on the display there, we have existing sewer and water that's in that roadway. Quite a while ago, there was a bank erosion project. If you go out there, you can see that there was posts that were driven down. There's some wood that was installed to help save the banks. According to Pierre, there was some foam blocks that was put in there to lighten the loading of the soils in that area to help protect that, but it has still been eroding. So what we're doing here is we went out for an RFP to a number of different geotechnical firms to do a study on what we can do to help mitigate future erosion of the bank with the addition of this storm water lift station. Braun was the only geotechnical firm that submitted a proposal to do the work, and they're very familiar with the site. They've done some work in this area. So they would actually, the intent would be for them to come in, analyze the soils, and come up with some concepts of what can we do in the future when these projects happens to help mitigate any future erosion of these banks. Again, to protect the sewer and water infrastructure that we have in the ground. Eventually the other part of this is that we eventually are wanting to apply for a BRIC grant for the storm water lift station. The odds of getting the BRIC grant, it's a federal grant, are lower, but it's worth the effort to apply for it. The $100,000 that we got in the state grant is for us to do the preliminary engineering work that we would use to apply for that eventual BRIC grant here. And so there is incorporated into that state grant that we have are monies to do a geotechnical analysis. The quote of $17,500 that we received from Braun to complete the work that we had requested them is well underneath the number that we had applied for in our state grant dollars to pay for this. And then Braun has stated that they would also need to know what's the elevation of the bottom of the river channel in this area, because if they're going to be predicting future sloughing or things of that nature, they want to make sure that they know how deep is the river through this area. So we have a secondary quote included in the packet from Houston Engineering they basically have a drone boat that they can float on a river that would survey the bottom of the river channel that would assist Braun in their ability to do their analysis. So those are the two quotes that are incorporated into this ask tonight. And again, the state funding that we got for this is not to protect this, for example, this garage or these homes. It's specifically to protect our utility and our infrastructure. Now, when we get the eventual report from Braun, it will give us some concepts of what we can do in the future to do. That will be public knowledge that can be shared with these. I think there's about 26 private owners of a condo association, I believe, in this area. So we would share this report with them if they would like to use it as well. I know that they've actually had the gentleman from Braun that came and we had a meeting. He's actually been somebody that's been on site and looked at their garage that is showing signs of sloughing and talked about doing some micropiling for them in the garage. And so he's very familiar with the site and has had dealings with them as well. So we would make all of this information from this report accessible to the public. But again, the main thing for us is to protect our utilities and use this information to apply for a brick grant for the project, the upcoming project of that storm lift station. And that storm lift station would be one that is going to evacuate a lot of storm sewer from the core area eventually. So it's going to be a sizable lift station and quite an expensive project. It was listed as a $13 million project in the 2022 CIP. So if we can get any type of funding for that project, it would be pertinent. And this study is going to help us apply for that funding. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Commissioners, any questions of Mr. Hanson? Commissioner?
Thank you. So Dan, that, did you say it's $13 million just to move the water?
No, that would be what we had in the 2022 CIP for the construction of that major storm lift station.
Well, right, but what I'm concerned with is those condos that are there. This isn't even an accurate map, because when I look out across the street, those are almost in the water already, the garages. So I know if we do anything over there, something's gonna have to be done with those garages for sure. And I know it's not private, but we're gonna cause part of that problem.
That's what they're going to be looking at is what are we going to need to do to protect the banks from future sloughing and erosion for that. And there will be, with that future lift station project, energy dissipation in the outfall, and it would be designed to not just be a flume of water that gets shot into the river there. I mean, there would be a lot of energy dissipation that would be taken into consideration with that project. But this is the start of us starting to investigate what are we going to need to do to protect our riverbanks in this area. But yeah, definitely that garage specifically, I'll just point out on the display, that's the garage that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep, there's basically a fault line going through the middle of it and a crack going across their driveway right there. And if you were to stand there and take a look at the garage door going in, about halfway through the garage door, there's an axis that it's tilting. So that garage is in the process of falling into the river, and it has been for a number of years.
When you get to the garages there, you can't walk behind the garage to the riverbank. The berm that's there has been sloughing away. One cannot walk behind there. I've been on site.
There's about 2 to 4 feet depending on where you're standing.
At what point does this become a FEMA project like those other houses versus continuing to try and stabilize something that's, nature is probably gonna
We're going to
have its
defer to
way with?
Mr. Scott first and possibly then to Mr. Freeman. Mr. Scott?
Well, good. I'm glad to see that Mr. Freeman's still here. I was just so Commissioner George, to that question, over the last 10 years, we have on and off worked with the condo association at potentially pursuing a similar grant as we talked earlier tonight. The challenge for them is that there are 24 homeowners there, and you need 100% consensus to move forward. The first time we engaged them was in 2012, and off and on ever since. Mr. Freeman has most recently worked with that group. So I'd let him answer the most recent discussions that he's had with them, but we have asked if they want to pursue something like that, and again, there hasn't been 100% consensus from them to do so.
If you don't mind, I'll maybe try and answer that question as far as the garage goes. If you look at this as a FEMA project, FEMA does not, and it sounds kind of rude or maybe insensitive, the garage is not eligible. Once their home and their residence where they live starts to go into the water or starts to crack, then it becomes eligible. This project doesn't meet what we call benefit cost analysis. and you have to have over 1 for that. This one, when you put it up, is like 0.03. It's not even close to a 1. So in looking at this, because I've had the discussion with the state about this, we looked at this with those other 4 houses. We were going back and forth. There just was no way forward on this one for a FEMA project. The only way, and this is why we decided to go the scoping grant to kind of look at the whole project, what could we do, is to look at the utilities that are going to there. And even that right now still doesn't quite meet our benefit cost analysis.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. Any additional questions? So this is, please, Commissioner.
Yeah, I was just, can you clarify what we're voting on exactly? Are we voting on just to apply for the grant for this at this point then, or?
No, we've already received the $100,000 grant to do the studies that we're doing. So the two, basically I wanted to make the commission aware of the project because I don't know if this has been it hasn't been presented since I've been here. And I've been working with Pierre on getting the scoping together. So it's A, to make you aware of the project, and B, to approve the 2 contracts that we have in here. These will both be funded through that grant, so there's no cost to the city for these two contracts to be awarded by the city. But
Brown Intertech for $17,500 and Houston Engineering for $7,000. Correct?
Yep.
And again, it's covered by the grant,
Okay.
the $100,000 grant.
Make a motion to approve. There's no more
Commissioner
questions.
Simmons, is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded. The City Commission approved project number 9038, a bank stabilization project at 622 Morrison Street, and award the contracts. Brown Intertech for $17,500 and for Houston Engineering for $7,000. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 13. Cheyenne Street Bike Lane. Dan Hansen, City Engineer, will be, and this is to approve it in addition of a bike lane striping on South Cheyenne. Mr. Hansen.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. Currently, the City of West Fargo has a contract with North Star to do striping around town, and part of that striping is Cheyenne Street to stripe it back to its existing conditions. It was brought to my attention that there is a gap in our bicycle facilities in that corridor, north to south, on Cheyenne between 7th Avenue West and 13th Avenue West, where we've got bike facilities all the way from the lights, basically all the way up to 13th. And then once you get to 13th, from 13th to 7th, there really is no bike facilities there. The purpose for me bringing this forward tonight is when it was brought to my attention, I said, I'm not gonna just go out there and stripe that. I wanted to bring it to the commission's attention to see what the commission thinks about doing this work. And it wouldn't be a major dollar amount for this. It would be within about $5,000, less than $5,000 to add this to North Star's current project. I'm showing the area on this first slide. And then basically what we're looking at doing is on the west side of Cheyenne Street would be to take what's currently one of the driving lanes and turn that into 2 opposite direction bike lanes, and then have a 3-foot safety lane and make that head to head. So basically what we would be doing is we would be taking that center turn lane out and installing the striping for the bike lanes on the west side of the road. We would not be touching the parking on the, excuse me. We wouldn't be adjusting any of the parking on it. It would just be taking out that center turn lane. When it was brought to my attention, it was mentioned that there are no east-west corridors that run through this section, so there's no, other than people heading into residences, northbound traffic, there's no streets that they're turning into that continues to the west. To the east, they're more of the local roadway. And currently, right now, we've only got 1 lane going in each direction. With the difference is we have that shared center turn lane. Again, with this, we would be taking away that center turn lane, making it head-to-head, but adding those bicycle facilities. And so, putting it to the commissioners, do we want to explore this option of changing the striping project, or is this something that is not wanted by the commission? I won't fall on my sword either direction with this, but I wanted to, before we would do anything with this, I wanted to bring it in front of you to get your discussion.
Thank you for that. The parking on the east side of Cheyenne will not be affected?
That's what I've been told, is that we're not touching that parking lane.
Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you. I'll just make the quick comment. That road is way, way too busy for a bike path, especially during business hours. I mean, it's backed way up to 7th Avenue now. That would be so dangerous. And in fact, we neglected Mayor. We wanted to make a public comment about Mark Knutson, so I hope you would, because this is a good segue right into that. This is just way, way too dangerous for I would much prefer to leave that gap if that's the way it be, and they can go through the park and go up that way down, and then go out through by a gateway and go across and go under the tunnel. This is way too busy for a bike.
You got the walking path from
The Drain 45
Drain
walking
45.
path that we just put in is east of this, a ways that could be used.
Again, we thank you, Mr. Hanson, for bringing this forward. Commissioners, any additional questions of Mr. Hanson? Mr. Anderson?
Well, I've got my opinions, but Commissioner Simmons,
I didn't mean to.
same thing, so you're good.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page with this.
I'll make the
I-
motion to deny.
Yeah, second.
He's looking for approval, so we need a motion.
Make a motion to deny.
I think Robin just did.
I'm sorry, did you make one? I apologize.
I did, I apologize.
I'd-
Motion to deny.
I don't want a negative motion. I want
Oh,
a
okay.
positive motion. That's
How do you-
proper
so how do you-
parliamentary
so
I would suggest a motion to leave the striping as it remains on.
I will make the motion to only restripe how it currently is configured, not how it's showing up there.
Is there a second?
There we go.
Second.
Second by Commissioners
Whatever.
George.
Sure.
It's been moved and seconded to restripe Cheyenne Street from 7th to 13th Avenue as present. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Don't stripe it that way, Dan.
No, and believe it or not, that's all I have for you
All
tonight.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, we are now on item number 14, which is the first reading of ordinance 1233. It's a legislative update, and Mr. Shockley is not with us this evening, so we'll call on Sarah.
Thank you, President Dardis and Commissioners. This is an ordinance mainly affecting the traffic section of the city's code, just to update our code to match some of the revisions that were done this last legislative session.
All right, very good. Questions, Commissioners, of anything?
I should add, it has been reviewed by the police department as well.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve first reading.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Olson, a second by Commissioner Simmons to approve the first reading of ordinance changes 1233, the legislative updates of the last legislative session. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 15 is an update on commission portfolios. This is an agenda item that I brought forward. There has been obviously discussion with regard to a hire that we have in the finance department. There were numerous, we were very pleased with the number of applicants that we had, double digits. That was narrowed. When I was informed that Mrs. Olson would be a part of the final interviews, at that point in time, we initiated that we were going to change the portfolio of Commissioner Olson, being his wife was a part of that, the final interviews. I was immediately notified after those interviews took place by our finance director that the credentials, the experience of Mrs. Olson rose to the top, And at that point in time, I initiated a phone call to the city that we change these ordinances. I reached out to Commissioner George and Commissioner Olson with regard to this, as the perception, if you will, being his secondary portfolio was finance. I requested Commissioner George to switch with Commissioner Olson, and Commissioner Olson, we talked about, and I looked at all the other commissioners.
Well, you didn't call me.
Well, I didn't need to, because the first request I made, it was very positive. So Commissioner George was very receptive to the idea, and that's why it's on tonight's agenda, because prior to that, I had no knowledge as to whether or not Mrs. Olson would be the finalist, and be a finalist, and/or be the individual that was hired for that position as a senior accountant for the Finance Committee. So with that, that's why I have the authority to appoint the portfolios, but I also want every time that the commissioners vote on them as well. And even when we do it on a change of election, it's always the final decision by the commission, not the mayor.
Right.
So that's why it's here.
I'll make a motion to approve the changes.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson, second. Been moved and seconded to approve the change of secondary portfolio from Commissioner Brad Olson from Finance to Police and Fire, and to change the secondary portfolio for Commissioner Mandy George from Police and Fire to Finance. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 17, we have the City Administrator's report being given by the Assistant City Administrator, Dustin Scott.
Well, thank you again, Commission President Dardis and Commissioners. I'll try to be brief here. Quick staff update. Just a reminder that our new HR manager starts August 1. And on Wednesday, we are conducting interviews for the library director. So hopefully the next meeting or two, we'll have an announcement as to who would be offered that position. The next thing I want to bring up is the budget. This week, we are starting to have preliminary budget reviews with commissioners. We conducted 2 of them today. They're going well. We have some work to do. Moving forward, we hope to complete the budget reviews with all the commissioners this week, hopefully for the July 24th meeting, which is our next commission meeting, by the way. We would be able to present a preliminary budget to the commission. I don't anticipate there would be action taken at that meeting, more of a directive given to staff on how to move forward, and then bring the final draft of the preliminary budget to the August 7th meeting. The state does require us to submit our preliminary budget to the county by August 10th. So we have a lot of work to do in the next few weeks, but we are confident that we will get that work done and move forward with a good budget. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Scott regarding his report on the budget process? All right. Anything else for us, Mr. Scott?
Not under the report, no.
Okay, thank you. Yesterday met with a tragedy of former West Fargo resident and businessman in our community, and the news that Mark Knutson was tragically killed in a traffic accident in Detroit Lakes. I know that Commissioner Simmons knew him. I know that Commissioner George knew him. I knew him. I did a lot of business with him over the years with his marathon efforts that he has done. He was a great advocate for public health and fitness and all of those types of things. So out of respect for Mr. Knutson, the fact that he lived in our community, had businesses in our community, it's sad to even have to talk about the passing of Mark Knutson. He was a great individual. And I know Commissioner George has had strong feelings about what a good person Mark was, as does Commissioner Simmons.
Yeah, he was a friend of mine for many years, and he just did so many wonderful things for the community, outreach, volunteering, charity work. It just did such wonderful work for so many people, was an inspiration, a role model just to myself and many, many people. And he'll be sorely, very sadly missed, and a great loss to our communities.
And his family. He's
And his
still got a
family,
young family.
Yep.
Mark was only 53 years old. Okay, do you have anything else in correspondence that you'd like to share with us, Dustin?
Yes, there was a handout Emily provided at the beginning of the meeting from High Road H&R Benefits. So I believe you have that.
I received that today, and I have shared that with all the commissioners. They all have a copy of that. It's a third-party investigation type thing. Former Commerce Commissioner Michelle Comer's new businesses that she's started in the community does this type of work as well. So for future reference, you're well. I have one thing that I need to talk about and I need to address, and this is all on me, all right? When Jenna Wilm, our HR director, resigned, I sat down with Mr. Shockley and Mr. Scott, and I didn't understand all the legal liabilities that were required to have certified HR people initiating our payroll. I made the decision. I asked Dustin Scott and I asked John Shockley, particularly Mr. Shockley, to design and develop a agreement with Mrs. Wilm that she would continue to provide advice to us until our new finance director is on place, so she could best understand all those liabilities that the city of Fargo. We have 275 plus employees, and if you add the part-time employees, we have 300. So this is not an easy task, and the other people that we have in that department were not familiar with that, the payroll process. When the new news came about that Mrs. Wilm had taken another position within the community, there was additional conversations that took place immediately. The day we were made aware of that, of where her employment was going to be, additional discussions took place. So on July 7th was the last day. We're not going to go through the other 2 months that we had asked for with regard to that separation agreement. July 7th is the last day that any salary was being paid, which was obviously last week. We do have an obligation for time earned off, her vacation and stuff, to still have to pay for that, which that is being calculated and worked on as we speak. So my apologies to my fellow commissioners. I didn't reach out to all of you. It was something that I thought it was absolutely important because we had payroll that coming week, and our payroll staff, HR staff, was ill-prepared to do that. So if I owe an apology to the community for doing that, I'd still stand by that decision if I had to make it tomorrow. But I wanted everybody to know the facts. The day that we found out that she had taken taken other employment within the city, and that perception by the public, which is real and acceptable, it was stopped that day, the day I found out. So that's all I have. Commissioners, if you have questions of me, I'd welcome them. But I was trying to do the right thing because we had payroll to get out. There was legal liabilities that was responsible to all of our employees of getting their payroll checks. And I felt that the best avenue for that is to ask her to be a consultant. We weren't sure that we were going to get the level of finance director that we have acquired. If you haven't met her and you haven't worked with her, look forward to it. She's top notch. So we were able to ratchet that back. That combined with the fact that there was employment taken with our legal counsel's firm. So again, I stand by the decision that I made. If I put you, any of you commissioners, in an odd spot with regard to the public and inquiry, my apologies to you. I didn't have time to wait for the next commission meeting. Okay, that's all I have on that. Mark?
I'll just make a comment. Thank you, Mayor. You know, we as a commission, there's times when we need to stand together and work together. And this is one of them. So, Mayor, by no means do you take that blame alone. I mean, I stand by what you did. You know, we're not always going to understand everything until it's passed. It's easy to look through the window, you know, look back and say hindsight, you know, quarterback, I should have did that. But you made the right decision, and it worked out the way it should have. And so I definitely stand behind you, and I think I speak for the other commissioners as well.
I'm not looking for that.
Well, you got it, okay?
Because if the public's concerned about it, we should all be concerned about it.
Right.
And if it had the perception of it was inappropriate, that's the facts. The day I found out, new negotiations took place of terminating that severance agreement that we had. The day. I found out at about 8 o'clock in the morning, and by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we had a final agreement of terminating the separation of contract. And the July 7th was the last day that she was paid payroll, but we do have to pay for her time on. That's state
And that's
law.
a law.
That's state law.
Yeah. Yep, okay.
All right, commissioners, do you have anything that you'd like to bring forward this evening? Staff, department heads, anything that you'd like to bring forward this evening? All right. Commissioner Simmons.
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Olson.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.